fair group of people.
We're fair, on average.
I guess that's fair.
Fair and just. Yeah, that's fair. Fair and just. Raz. Same brain.
All right, everybody. We are now live. Feel free to take it away, Roxy.
Welcome.
Go ahead, Amanda.
Welcome, everyone, to our seventh day of Regenera Rising, global confluence for people like you, creators of regenerative futures, whether you know it or not. That is what we are here to convene around. That is what we're here to ignite in you, ignite in all of us, so that we can walk towards, or maybe even sprint towards, a future that is just and fair. Speaking of fair, our theme for today is Regenaissance Fair. This idea of coming together and celebrating and cross-pollinating like fairs of many millennia old, and also like world's fairs, coming together and showing the cutting edge of our thinking and our technology and all of our different disciplines mashed together to see how we can create a world that works for, Bucky said, 100% of humanity, and as we have adjusted to make it work for 100% of life for all beings. And here we are. This is the summit for the Design Science Studio, which is an educational incubator for artists and creators around the world, run by Heb Ritual Studio and the Buckminster Fuller Institute. I am Amanda Joy Ravenhill, honored to be the executive director at Buckminster Fuller Institute and the cartographer of complexity of the studio. And I am joined here by Roxy, our director of the studio and architect. Welcome, Roxy.
Yeah, Amanda, architect. I like that, architect. That's new.
Oh, I just added, yeah. We like wordplay around here. It's very important that we have a new lexicon to step into this new world. Remembering that we're part of nature, remembering that it's not just survival of the fittest, but rather survival of the fitness within your ecosystem. How much you give back actually determines your evolution and your role. And that's what we're here to celebrate. We're here to celebrate regeneration. We're here to celebrate new narratives of a future that is fair and just and equitable. And we have 144 global artists that we've been working with in the studio, launching all sorts of really neat projects, from books to universities to museums to entire movements. And we're here to help launch them and propel them and resource them and connect them in this time of disconnection. We have found one another in this virtual fire of sorts that we've come around the circle. And it's been so wonderful to meet one another, so wonderful. As systems thinkers, I think a lot of us feel like we're misfits often because modern industrial westernized society does not recognize the comprehensivist, as Buckminster Fuller would call it, the expert generalists in all of us, those who are polymaths in training. And so it's been so fun to meet one another and feel belonging, especially in these wild times. And one of the artists that we've been resourcing and connecting and learning from is your piece, who's gonna welcome us this morning with some movement and song and dance. This is a tradition in all of our meetings that we start with some embodiment practice. So unless there's anything else to add, Roxy, we'll hand it over to you.
We can cover it in our session in just a little bit. I think it's a perfect time to hand it over to this.
The time is yours.
Affair can be a very sordid affair. But at the end of a day, a fair is what you all choose to make it. And I don't know how you're feeling all today, but I am awfully excited. I am very, very, very excited. Not because of all the things I've seen up to now in Regenera and Mora, yeah, and in their other platforms, but also because there's so much more to look forward to. So ladies and gentlemen, may I ask you what you're looking forward to? What excites you? What makes you warm inside? And let's see if we can pass the contagion all around. I want to hear you. What makes you excited this morning? What's got you excited, people? Vincent, Anthony, Eladia, what are you looking forward to?
You!
Me?
Spring is coming in the northern hemisphere. Fall is coming in the southern hemisphere.
I have found it so curious that I have become a person now accustomed to consume art in ways that I never had thought imaginable. And one of the amazing things is that in the constructs of our mind, very often we cannot interpret things which are alien to us. But when I enter this space and I see so many beautiful people creating things that transcend what I believe art to be. For example, Mark taught me how to beam, how to extend my cosmic antenna and start speaking the will and the word of the cosmos out. And it's an act of faith, that's right. It's beautiful. Mark is with us right now. Mark, can you say a word or two about beaming?
Took me quite a while to notice that until it was reflecting upon you all.
There is light. There is light in the air. There is light in the air. I would right now like to charge this space with excitement. I would like to charge it with wonder. And there is one visual signal you can do that with. That's right. Show me a little bit of movement. Show me 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 movement. Become the embodiment of excitement. Show me what excitement looks like. On 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Excitement! Yeah! It's so beautiful to see it happening here. This is the regenerative. Regenerative. What is this? What is this? Regenerative. That's not what I was expecting, but this is one of the cool things. Mark has been informing me that there is actually a heightened form of interpersonal communication called beaming. So basically what we're doing is we're all getting into a flow, and at some given moment, you throw the ball in the air. And the question is, who's gonna grab it? Who's gonna grab it? Who's gonna grab it, all right? So I'm gonna throw the ball in the air right now, I'm gonna catch it, whoosh, and I'm gonna go, sa-ba-da-ba-da. You're playing ball with me. Sa-ba-da-ba-da. Sa-ba-da-ba-da. Sa-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. Let's take the ball. Let's throw it up in the air. Let's see who catches it and who can direct us in another playful direction. Ready? Here goes. 1, 2, 3. Who's gonna catch it? I think Natalia caught it. Natalia, did you catch that ball? You caught that ball. Where would you like to take this beaming session? In which direction would you like to take it?
Towards the sun.
Towards the sun, towards the sun, towards the sun and its rays. All right, how about this one? Sun come out, sun come out, sun come out again. Put your hands in the air, let's invite it. Sun come out, sun come out, sun come out and play. Come out and play, yeah, come out and play. The sun comes out and plays. And it gives me back the ball, and I have the ball right now. I'm gonna throw it in the air once more. Everybody, attention, who's gonna catch the ball? 1, 2, 3, in the air.
Rain.
Rain. Rain. You know, one of the most advanced special effects in the universe, One of the best studios or one of the best technologies is not Dolby, it's not LucasArts stuff, it's the human imagination. So I'd like you all to take your hands and imagine rain. I'm singing, I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling, I'm happy again. I walk down the lane with a happy refrain. The sun's in my heart and I'm ready for
Rain.
For rain. What am I ready for?
Water.
Regeneration.
Evolution.
Regeneration. All right, I was going to say love, but that's okay because I wasn't holding the ball. That's fine. All right, sometimes the ball falls on the ground. And you know, when you're in a creative process, it's natural that should happen. And there's actually one person I want to throw the ball to today. His name begins with an S, and his last name begins with a B. And his last name ends with a U, because he's also a musical personality. We're beaming. Stefan, are you ready? I'm throwing the ball specially to you. Here you go, brother. This is headed right towards you. Whoosh. You got it.
Now what am I doing with this? Well, you were going to say love, and I'm going to say metaphysical gravity.
Got it. Very good. That's very beautiful. I would like to throw it back to Dean Hansen, who actually has rain in his hands. Dean, it's going to you. And after the rain comes the sun. Sun, come out. Sun, come out. Sun, come out again. Come out and play. Come out and play. Come out and play. Come out and play. As you have noticed, ladies and gentlemen, this is completely unscripted. I'm making this up as I go along. And you know what the beauty of it is that when we when we connect our creative imaginations and our creative powers, we get beautiful things. For example, Harris just wrote in the comments, "Oh, beautiful. When you get rain and you get sunshine, what do you get? What's the result? Rainbows. Rainbows. Beautiful, beautiful prisms of light in the air. That's what we are. Beautiful prisms of light, shining on everybody, shining on everybody." So, why do I love these activities? Simply because I believe that if we learn to play together, if we learn to take out and reveal our true creative natures, we can actually change the world a little bit more effectively, and most especially a little bit more ludically. So now, with that sense of excitement, with that sense of great wonder, I would like to throw the ball back to Amanda, Nico, Faith, and Roxy, because they are the key holders of the Regeneissance fair.
Yes. Oh.
Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to introduce you to our next guest. And I think it's also the perfect introduction for this day. And I'll speak a little bit more about why after when we are talking about the Regenaissance Fair. But I have the pleasure to introduce you to Laurence Currie-Clark. I remember reading a post that he did somewhere in some Facebook group, some obscure place that kept me completely fascinated. It was like a really long post. I was like, I really like this human. I like where his mind is. And I reached out and we ended up becoming good friends. And then I invited him to join the cohort and yes, and he has been a very special contributor to the Design Science Studio, and I'm so glad he's here today to share a little bit of his very privileged brain. You'll have a sneak peek into his mind. The first exposure that I had to his thinking was a document called the Regenestants Playbook that you can find somewhere in the Regenera virtual worlds. Let's look for the. Actually, I'm gonna show you the sign so you look for it, almost like a scavenger hunt. Just you're gonna need to find this sign, and if you see it, just click and you'll be able to read this document. Just long, but it's so worth it. It will blow your mind in many different levels. So he's been working really hard to design and put some foundation, some philosophical and practical foundation to what the Regeneissance should be, and how to do that through celebration and through gamification. And yeah, hopefully he'll be able to give you a glimpse and get you curious enough to get to know more about it. Laurence, it's such an honor to have you here.
Hi everybody. Thank you, Jurgis, for that great play, which I believe is what lies at the center of regeneration. It's the return to the point where time no longer becomes a line that we are stuck in, but instead becomes a field that we can explore, and we can feel into all the different directions, and we can decide in which direction we want to play with. What's the next dimension that we want to grasp with our grip and twist and tear and twine. Yeah, so thank you for that. The Regenaissance is the application of living systems to society as a whole. It's how do we figure out to make ourselves as individuals, how do we make our interpersonal relationships, and how do we make our collective relationships into these living systems which have these qualities of inherent regeneration, these qualities of metabolism, the biomimetic qualities which take us beyond the first level of our understanding, the mechanistic, where we were already imitating nature, into this deeper understanding of biology and making our individual, interpersonal, collective lives more biological, so becoming more and more alive. In that spirit, I was working with the Design Science Studio and the Collaboratory on quite a grandiose and esoteric project, which is meaningful, and I'll quickly run us through it, and there are some important ideas there, but I'd like to bring us right back down to the foundations and the fundamentals of what we need for this regeneration. So here what I'm presenting to you is Theia. So Theia is the name of a proposed planet, a theoretical planet that came into collision with the Earth around 4 billion years ago and gave birth to the moon. So it was a fundamental birthing point of the earth and the living system of the earth and the moon. Also in mythology, it's the daughter of Gaia and of Uranus. So what that means is that it's the interface between the earth and the sky. That's where Theia lies. Now, if you want to go more into the technological realm, which is where I saw this application, it's between the cloud and the ground. So it's between the earth and between the internet. And one way of doing this is with this interesting nested fractal navigation system that Uber came up with, funnily enough, and made it open source. So it basically allows to have this fractal relationship between any single point and the totality of the Earth, which is a feature of living systems. So here, for example, you can see how with the different levels of this nested map, you can have really high resolution or you can have lower resolution. And then afterwards, I was bringing all these ideas of, okay, multi-level geodemographic memetics, all these long words, which, so what do they really mean? Here, for example, it means mapping where is this particular meme emerging, where is a meme being born. So if you go to the highest level of resolution, it could be on a particular street. You can also see that in the larger context of, okay, it's coming from a particular country, and it's coming from a particular region. And with that, you can start to map, okay, what ideas are emerging from where. And then with the geodemographics, you can have things like, so who are the people who are generating the content? Where do they come from? How old are they? What's their background, etc., etc. So you can start nourishing, you can start gaining all this information between what's happening on the ground, the people who are living there, and also on the higher levels of the internet, and then creating a feedback loop in between the two. But anyway, so like, all just long words and interesting diagrams and stuff like that. But that's not really what I want to talk about, because to really get down to the foundation of this regenerative process, before even the interface, there is the face. And my feeling is that our faces themselves, which have become so linear in our ways of interacting with each other, and there's a fundamental source of play in the face, in the skin itself, and so much emotion, so much intention is held inside of the face. And before we can learn how to release that tension and to rather than following these specific lines of how we present our faces to each other, then that's a very first step towards this regenerative process. And then how much time have I got left? I've got like another 2 minutes, right?
Yeah, about that, 2, 3.
Okay. And then you can start entering into the interface. Only once your face has become non-linear, let's say, then you can start entering into a non-linear interface where rather than just following how you feel, you have to express yourself, then you're able to enter into that time field, into that play, that interplay. And then another fundamental practice for this regeneration is dance. It's freeing again the linearity which is encoded into the body, and entering into that space of play by synchronizing into something else. So throughout our day, we encode short-term trauma. And to release that short-term trauma, we can enter into a different frequency by attuning to the dance. And in that way, we can liberate ourselves from the timelines of the trauma, again, into these time fields. And it seems to me that before we figure out these fundamental things of freeing the face and the interface and freeing the body so to enter into this realms of play, then collaboration is impossible, because we're always going to enter into these trauma knots where my timeline is going to get intertwined with your timeline rather than there being an interplay between my time field and your time field. So I'd like to encourage everybody to continue working on these great ideas, which are all super important, but also to make sure that we all figure out these fundamental practices of freeing the face, freeing the interface, freeing the body, and entering as deeply as we can into that state of play. Okay, that's me. Thank you, everybody.
If you are a firm believer in play, say I. Yes, we are. I'm an absolute firm believer in play. One of the preconditions of play, or two of the preconditions of play, the first one is trust. And I think trust is extremely important, right? Where you can feel safe, where you can release. But the other one is excitement. Because if you have an over-trusting environment where there is no excitement, things get very, very boring. And I kind of feel that one of the cool things about these spaces, about getting so many multidisciplinary artists in one place, is that random things start to happen. We start reflecting onto others the creativity we have inside. And one of those great examples, one of those great luminaries who demonstrates that principle is Mel Andringa. Guess what? Mel is not here. But if you want, we can invoke Mel. I can ask you all to be a little bit more like Mel. Show me what Mel would do in these circumstances. What would he do? Show me Mel. Natalia, can you
Great
invoke
Aunt
Mel?
Belva. He would show us Great Aunt Belva.
No, Harris, you're describing Mel. I'm asking you to invoke Mel. I'm asking you to be Mel. Show me, what would Mel do? Yes, Amanda's got it right.
Welcome to Podship Earth.
Exactly. Our personalities, our creative energies are completely contagious. They are overflowing the containers and they are infecting everybody here. And because of that, we are becoming better human beings. That is the magic of the fair. Yes, Amanda, is that the magic of the fair?
This is the magic of the fair. Yes, it is.
Where our creativity is put all into one place, into one magical, mystical blender, and then we get something that is much more than the sum of its parts. I think that's the way I understand fair. And with that, I would like to pass the word, all the attention, and the fun creativity ball over to Amanda, Roxy, Nico, and Faith.
Thank you. Oh, glasses on. Wonderful. I love the play. It's it's where we grow and learn, and humor, just cuts right through to the chase and is so important. I love the role of the trickster, the Brer Rabbit, the Raven, the Jester, and being in a fair. I think, I invite all of us to tune into our inner trickster today. That character that makes fun of the established order through humor and pranks and can get people out of the stuck paradigm that we might be in of mechanistic or overly mechanistic reductionist thought and into one that is in tune with nature's rhythms and cycles and nature's base state of regeneration. So bring on the play, bring on the tricks. Here we are. Roxy.
Well, Nico, before you go to that one, I want to give a little context. Because Amanda did a great job at introducing the day and where we're at. And then Laurence talked about the Regenaissance and play and how incredibly important it was. And I just want to acknowledge that we have come together, joined up. Oh, Jurgis, don't stop. Joined up in this inaugural celebration. Yes, there we go. This decade-long global movement, and have come together, all of you, creators, systems thinkers, organizations, maestros of play, to imagine, to collaborate, and to co-create this world. Can you believe it? We did it. We mobilized. I think almost 800 people have come through these doors. And that's just officially through these doors in these last 7 days. That's amazing. For this historical moment for planetary regeneration, birth of Regenera. What is Regenera? It is a story universe created by the Design Science Studio that was built to scaffold thousands of projects and ideas throughout the decade ahead for this future that we speak of, that is equitable, regenerative, and just. So this educational incubator that has been built to empower creators, these creators like Laurence, like Carlotta who will come, like llaria, and so many more we will hear from today. They are all directing their creative energy towards this future. And their projects are a part of the story universe of Regenera. It is a floating virtual city that was designed to be the home and the heart of the Regenaissance, our cultural and social movement that is seeking to comprehensively transform the way in which we think and live in society, redefining our relationship with each other and our beautiful planet home. It appeared on Earth in 2021 to show us what was possible in this decade and in our journey to restore ecosystems and bring about the principles of the Design Science Decade, which we'll share with you in just a moment. We have woven the city with the principles of our collective vision. We did world building session after world building session with all of our creators, and we wove together our collective visions into the tapestry that is Regenera. And so we've been celebrating the arrival of the city with this virtual summit. And we will be prodding and poking you to go and play in the virtual worlds this weekend. Now that we've hit the weekend, voila, the Regenaissance Fair, we can go and play. Go play in Topia. We had an adventure in Topia last night. It was so fun. It was so fun. And we'll get to hear more, and we'll go wander around together. But thank you. Thank you for joining for this confluence, this bridging together of many waters of immersive experiences and celebrations and talks and workshops and art and surprises. And every one of them is showcasing the important, powerful, and collaborative ways design, science, and story collide within these worlds. As Amanda says, the clutch is in. Will we shift up or down? It's utopia or oblivion. Protopia. From weaponry to livingry. From extraction to regeneration. From me to we. We are co-conspirators of this revolution. And we are just going to share a little bit more about what the studio is all about now. And we've got this together. So excited. And I will pass the baton to Nicola.
Now? Can I put the slide now?
Yeah.
I have the button now? Yay! The Design Science Studio is an educational incubator for the art of the Regeneissance. and we love words that like tingle in your tongue. We empower global creators to imagine a regenerative future. We scaffold and mentor and give resources to and help and learn from and teach and fund artists who have a voice in many different shapes and forms and mediums that are willing to put that voice to the service of showing what's possible, to show what's possible in a world that works for 100% of life. We are in a time of radical systems change. Everything is changing. Everything is upside down. Nothing feels grounded anymore. And that's because we're in this liminal stage of transition in which we need to reimagine what is possible. And a movement is emerging. There's this feeling that something is happening. You're here because of it. Something called you here. Something said, these people are into something special. It's a visceral reaction to this dystopian and extractive narrative that we have named the Regenaissance. The Regenaissance is a movement. It's a movement. It's an idea. It's an ideal. The difference between an idea and an ideal is that an ideal is an idea that you aspire to, something that you want to see happen. And so we're in this proactive celebration of the world that can be. And this is something that has happened throughout history. It is through celebration and ritual that we connect, that we get together, that we're able to be in the same space and figure out what we need as a group, as a tribe, as a society. And it's much better to do it celebrating the possibilities than to do it in any other way. And so one of the things that inspire us with all this idea, and we drink a lot from some of the ideas of classic Greece, a couple thousand years ago. There was a lot of celebration there, and one of my favorite classic Greece celebrations is called the Leonisian Mysteries. And the Leonisian Mysteries were how to describe it? A following, an idea, a group of people, or a large group of people that would get together. They would get together seasonally in every solstice and every equinox, and they would get together annually, once a year, and they would get together for a larger, broader celebration every 5 years. And during this week, it was a week of pure celebration of being human and of upholding the norms of society for a few days, to be able to reflect and think what was working, what wasn't working, and what could be. And they would get into these rites of passage, to transition, to rethink, to just be able to move forward. And so we're trying to bring back a little bit of this. When we say Regenaissance, think big celebrations, things, big parties, big festivals like this, where we get to rethink what we need and who we are. And we do that through play.
Thank you. There's play kind of counterintuitively in Greek as well. And the urgency of this time can't be expressed. I don't know. I feel like every hyperbole actually has place right now, because what we do in the next decade matters literally for the future of humanity forever. And so here we are, a lot of different names for this decade of the 2020s, but I think Buckminster Fuller sums it up well when he says, planetary revolution is here, but there are options. A hot-headedly conducted, bloody revolution, everyone loses. A cool-headedly conducted, design, science, computer-accommodated wealth accounting revolution, and all of humanity wins. And And so here we are, propelling design science, this idea of designing a world that works for all, for 100% of life, by looking to science, looking to ecological principles, nature's coordinate system, the 3.8 billion years of R&D that nature has been conducting on this planet for us, for all of us to learn how to step into a future that works for all. And we've come up with these 5 themes of the decade, roughly in this order, but all of them happening at the same time as well. And that has been the themes for the last 5 sessions of Regenerative this week. We started with reconciliation and commitment, this idea that we have to reconcile where we have come from, the atrocities that we are standing upon, the genocides, the cycles of oppression. Reconcile that, go through series of truth and reconciliation processes, play with reparations and see how we can balance things again and make commitments wilder than we can imagine without really knowing how we're going to get there, but knowing where we want to go. Then into restoration, restoring our ecosystems and ecosystems, and capital transfer. We will transfer tens of trillions of dollars in this decade towards a regenerative economy. Then into resilience and coming together as we experience shocks to the system like we have in the last year. How can we come together and build mutual aid networks and other tools that dismantle the systems that created these problems while also addressing the immediate need? Then into regeneration and celebration, tuning into the regenerative principles of our living systems around us and celebrating that we have way more capability than we could possibly imagine. And then finally, re-enchantment and circularity, becoming re-enchanted, becoming an enchanted society once again, being in tune with nature's rhythms, harmonies, and song. And the circularity, an idea where we get to this point somewhere later in the decade in which all materials are either recovered from past products or grown in a regenerative way that heals ecosystems and communities. And so we celebrate all of these 5 phases and welcome this regenerative paradigm, this era of the Regenaissance that we are celebrating. And we look to the first principles of living systems. These are the ones that Carol Sanford has identified. And she teaches us these first principles inspired by her grandparents who were Mohawk Native Americans. And she goes through all of them, and I'm just going to touch on them a little bit now to give us an idea of what this regenerative paradigm is all about. So starting with wholeness, the inspiration to look at an entire system, always zoom out in the context, because if we look just at the parts, we might miss the underlying larger narrative. We might miss the systems that are creating the parts. And if we do that, we might just continue to play whack-a-mole and say, okay, I'm going to solve this problem, and then 10 more come up if we don't look at the whole. Then into potential, this idea of really focusing on potential rather than problems, kind of an appreciative inquiry approach rather than a problem-solving approach. If you just look at the problem, you might get stuck in that paradigm that created that problem. Buckminster Fuller says, you can't change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Potential is all about focusing on that new model. Then there's essence, this idea that each one of us, every living being, every pattern in the world has its own essence, and our tendency to over-categorize and over-typologize and put things into compartments, again, will lead us to missing the larger picture and the potential in that being. Then there's the idea of nestedness, that there's holes or holons within larger holons, that each one of us exists within a larger set of holes and also has smaller sets of holes within us. And that's where you see self-reflective patterns, like what we learned from fractal geometry. Then there's nodal, which is all about the trim tab concept. There's places in a system where the least amount of effort causes the maximum effect. There's kind of these like cheat sheets to systems change where you can find these acupressure points where a little intervention can change everything, kind of like the butterfly effect. Then there's developmental. This is always changing. Change is the only constant. Change is God, as Adrienne Marie Brown says. it's always developing. We're always developing. Again, we have this tendency to kind of see one another as nouns rather than verbs, as Bucky says. And then finally, systemic reciprocity. This idea that we're always in balance and in reciprocity with one another, kind of getting away from ideas of supremacy and hierarchy that a lot of us fall into because our culture has been built on those things. Not all of our cultures. Modern westernized, industrialized culture has mostly been. There's a lot of indigenous wisdom traditions that hold a lot of these principles still true, have not left the original narrative there, and we look to them for inspiration. So there's a little dip into the swimming pool of the regenerative paradigm. So much more to explore there. It's always, again, developmental, and invite you all to join us in the journey of learning more about it. We have a lot of different programs at Buckminster Fuller Institute, and we're creating a library for the regenerative paradigm called the Co-Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth. You can find it at spaceshipearth.live. We'd love to have you as co-creators in it. Thanks.
And just so you know that Amanda made that drawing. That is her sketch note. She is an artist. Isn't it beautiful? You should follow her on Instagram.
And yesterday I did my first time-lapse sketch note. Thanks to Laura. Yeah, I was inspired by all the art this week, and I'm about to do another one set up here. You can't do it. It's connected to my computer, but by the end of the day, I will have one on the decade.
Yay, you're doing it.
That was my art project. I'm one of the revolutionaries in the program, but had a couple other priorities. But anyway,
right.
Let me get there.
Getting there. Same. Beep. Yes, so let's architect the future together. This regenerative evolution, this revolution, because this is the decade. And if we don't do it now, we won't be able to. And it's our chance to get it right. This is our final exam. And we are regenerating our culture and our planet, nested holes, reimagining our future. And we can reorient to nature's design and know that art and design is this critical component, is this cross-cultural language for systemic change. And during this regen era, which is diverse and resilient and equitable and collaborative and biomimetic and decolonized, we are transforming our capacity to create a harmonic future by envisioning it, which means we are going face first into the fact that these things are not true right now all the way, but we can help to propel them, to uplift them, and to make them more available. And that is our collective task with all our wonderful partners. Yay, partners! We have so many individuals, visionaries, creatives, team members. I think we'll be finally done making our beautiful credit reel today, so we can start sharing it tomorrow. It's just like, oh, and this person, there's so many people. But yeah, so much gratitude to all of our partners presence. They worked so hard to put the power in the hands of the creators so they could manage all of their own events. And that's why there have been 225 individual listings this week, because they could do it themselves. It's amazing. Gray Area helped us build an entire virtual world. Planet Home created an entire series of content. Lembas, I mean, I could just go on and on. All of these people are incredible, and we love them, and we thank them so much. And I'm going to show you 2 pieces of art that were made live yesterday in case you missed it. Gunel Eva, one of our revolutionaries, created these during our live sessions yesterday, and we'll be creating more tomorrow. So with that, we will pass it on back to Jurgis. We welcome you to join the revolution, to be in touch with us, to support our work, and to support all of these creators and this transition that we are in together today.
I don't know what to say. Hold on. Wait. Am I on? Do you hear my voice? If you hear me, clap once.
We got you, Jurgis.
If you hear me, clap twice. I poached that trick from Amanda Joy. But you know what? It's okay, because I asked her for her permission. I asked, can I steal that trick? And I hope that all of you are picking up tricks from one another. Look, man, somebody is even pretending to be Mel on screen right now. They even got a background that looks like Mel. They even have Mel, written in their square. They've got the glasses like Mel. Occam's razor would inform me that actually what we have with us right now is a whole lot of melt, 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 is a whole lot of melt. It's really interesting the way that we as artists are always looking for people's feedback. Somebody to tell us that what we're doing is all right, that it's okay. But until we find more regenerative artists to inspire, they will feel like artists without a home. Orphan creative beings. And I know what that feels like because me personally, I'm a Colombian Lithuanian, which means that in Colombia, I'm Lithuanian. In Lithuania, I'm Colombian. And so, in a sense, I'm a person without a home. And that is something that afflicts many third world kids. People who say, I need to create my own reality. And the person I'm going to invite to next is not only a multidisciplinary artist, which has that same affliction as most of the 144 participants here with us at Regenera Rising, but she also is a Venezuelan French person. And I think that her art also informs, you know, how from this special perspective of coming out of the traditional realm, we look for new realities, new possibilities, and new dimensions. So I'm very, very happy to introduce Carlotta to you.
Wow, Jurgis, thank you so much for such a cool introduction. You're really good at it. I'm gonna be sharing my screen.
Carlotta, good introductions are not difficult when the people are truly inspiring. So my work is easy.
Oh.
She did what you just asked for, which is validate you as an artist.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna start, but before I start, I'd like to clarify that through this journey, I will be tackling impermanence not so much as the finite quality of temporary things, but rather as the philosophical problem of change.
Carlotta, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if you wanted to have audio in your presentation, then just make sure you click that share audio box when you share, because I'm not seeing your audio being shared. Thank you.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you. Okay, so impermanence. Impermanence is now, more than ever, a feeling to which we can all relate. I think that change is among us, hitting harder than ever. And in a world that works 100% for life, impermanence is something that I think we have to learn how to harness. A global pandemic has shaken our social ways of being, our jobs, our homes, our relationships to one another, nature around us. We suddenly realize how fast things can change and how fragile our structures can be. There are so many ways to tackle impermanence and so many scales and contexts to address it. So I'm just going to focus on my personal take on it and do what we humans do best, talk about ourselves. So let's start with some geographical context. I was born in one of the most impermanent countries of this world, that is Venezuela, as Jurgi said. It's in Latin America, and yes, we do have internet. Well, we like to think that we do because most of the time internet doesn't work. The weather in Caracas, the capital, is absolutely crazy. It changes constantly and dramatically from one second to the other. Like, this is the first thing you have to learn to embrace and adapt to, its impermanence. Water and electricity are rare commodities. The people in this picture are collecting water from the Guaire, that, yes, it is a river, but it's also the public sewer. Long story short, Venezuela suffers from a high impermanence rate. Let's take a look at these facts. The country is run by two presidents. One is a dictator and the other is not. The people in charge of the country, they're major drug dealers. Kidnapping is a job in high demand, and the inflation is so high that by the time people get paid, they can't even buy eggs, and so on and so on. And now that the first world, much like the third world, has gone through food shortages, toilet paper crises, revolts and riots and curfews and limitations, perhaps you can start to relate a bit more to what we have been going through for the last 25 years. Perhaps you start to understand the strength of those who migrate, in that they are truly masters of impermanence. You must wonder, how do you deal with what may seem to you like such absurdities or anomalies that have become normalities to so many across the world? In my case, I guess it had a lot to do with hope. In Venezuela, people hoped for change. They hope for change today, and they will keep hoping for change tomorrow. Hope has been shattered, shot at, imprisoned, stolen. And yet when you think it's gone, it reappears in a different shape and takes on with your routine. Hope is constantly changing, but never truly gone. One day you pray to the thug Ismail to protect your son, and the other you pray to the same thug that your kidnapping endeavor is a success. And another day you hope that your passport is going to be renewed. Ojalá, we say, it means hopefully. I grew up in a country of major political, social, and economical instability. And when your country has no future, you lose a home. You lose the land that keeps you from falling. You lose your professional projects, your dreams, and your expectations. There's no other way to exist for someone like that than to adapt. There's no other way to adapt than to start anew, again and again. And so we, Venezuelans, live in a cycle of constant change, a cycle of destruction and creation. But hey, Venezuela is not the only country that constantly changes, for sure. And countries are also not the only things that change. Look at us. The whole world races to cope with technological progress. And that is what has marked the path I follow as an artist, adaptability. And in particular, how living beings adapt to technological changes. And so I ask, what happens when the digital world permeates with the material reality? Is it a digital mutation? Or maybe we can call it a symbiosis? Or maybe an interference? What are the changes endured by our bodies, our psyches, and our landscapes? Venezuelans survive violence by creating a cult of thugs. And I wonder if there's a possibility that we survive all the advances of technology by creating a cult of them. Rituals. Rituals are repetitive habits, but they also bear such a strong religious connotation. Nowadays, screens are everywhere. We use them every day as an indispensable part of ourselves. And by doing so, we can argue that we unconsciously enact rituals that elevate technology to some sort of spiritual form. We enact a ritual with our interactions when we swipe, press, scroll, and tap obsessively, impulsively, and often devoid of any purpose. We enter a sort of blank trance state every time we scroll through Instagram's feed, a feed that is constantly changing, constantly showing something new? Why do we fall for a blankness again and again until we lose track of what we were first looking for? Is it our way to process the excessive amount of information we are subjected to? We enact a ritual when we feed the speed, when we hurry, multitask, eat while walking, order takeout, quick search every single fact. We accelerate more, as if we were trapped in the expansive speed of an ongoing momentum. And by doing so, the digital weaves in and out of the real, and time every day is affected. We make everything simultaneous in order to scan information in the most effective way. We can't concentrate with our soul bodies, not because they can't, but because we don't allow them to. So we create external aids to focus more efficiently. And so I ask again, is this a way to process the excessive amount of information we're subjected to? We also enact a ritual when we hear, touch, look, and feel digital media. The exposure to this type of media forces a constant translation in our brains from square waves, digital, and continuous waves, analog. This process is not only repeated endlessly every minute and every hour of every day, but also reflects the inherent impermanence of digital media, the lack of continuity. So in my work, I imagine the effects of technological change in behaviors and interactions, in language and sensitivity, in reception and transmission of information. I imagine something that allows you to reach, feel, and move in a structure from beyond, a dimension of existence for a hybrid being. And so I define a human, possessed and consumed by technology and its underlying architecture. A human that embodies several identities, several spaces, and several timelines, and that worships technology by becoming technology. I create a mutated entity, born in the conjunction of interface and skin, transcending organic qualities and natural evolution. An entity that is born in social media, the web of the self, reflecting its ego, its identities, its images of what it was, what it is, and what it could be. An entity that is born again and again from the data feeding neural networks, from our empty interactions, mutating into a life of its own, becoming an operating system with a life of its own. An entity that is born again and again, forgetting all previous attempts, aiming higher, aiming to abstraction and post-planetary becomings. Okay, back to reality. In the scope of the Design Science Studio's mission of creating for 100% of life, I have focused my attention on highlighting the importance of virtual and digital realities that I know a lot of people argue that we should abandon them, but I see them as too deeply rooted in our modern lives, which is why I believe that our virtual identities should be considered as parallel life forms. With that in mind, and many other factors that are explained in another talk that I will link at the end of this one, I've been working to create a hybrid breath, a breathing dialogue within digital interfaces, a collective performance that turns your screen time into an air supply, a network of breath that transforms our interaction with screens into an interconnected life form within a digital environment, so that we can learn how to coexist harmlessly. I called it symbiotic experiment for future ways of breathing. And it is one of many attempts to blend permanence and continuity with their exact opposites, truly embracing the idea of impermanence that has built who I am, what I believe in, and how I see the changes in the world. The Design Science Studio, along with the Living Systems Collaboratory, have supported me through the development of 2 iterations that are or will eventually be created in the llaria, the Museum of Regenerative Art. The goal, that is still under development, is to develop a live performance, a real-time exchange of life reality and virtualities.
Carlotta, I just wanted to give you a heads up that we're about at time. So
yeah, I'm almost done.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
With that in mind, and many other factors that are explained in another... Oh, did I already do this? Yes. Okay. Problem here. There. Okay. So in conclusion, I'd say that through my work and the concept of impermanence, I see machines in all forms and iterations as expressions of humanity's most ambitious ideas. They are traces, ruins, and expectations of utopias and dystopias, of fears and hopes, or of worse and better versions of the worlds we inhabit. The future may be fictional mutation endured by humankind through technological advancement, has a new expression, one that defines the new hybrid, one that abandons the human and the machine for other becomings, for new constructions, for inconceivable futures. Machines are left as the hollow, perhaps active or inactive remains of human dreams and expectations, the sacred remembrance of the organic human, relics of our humanness. Thank you for listening, for being here, for creating marvelous things. This is my contact information if you have any questions, and also a link that will lead you to my talk about a symbiotic experiment for future ways of breathing.
Carlotta, thank you very much. Can we get a big round of applause for Carlotta? Yes, yes. Can we get a lot of applause?
Beautiful. We cannot see you.
Hey.
I know. Houston, we have a problem. My camera has been overwhelmed from all this regenerative energy. But you know what? I'm not worried one bit. Because the way that we have invoked Mel, I would now like to ask someone to become my avatar and to pretend, yes, to be me, to be my visual self. Who will raise their hand? I know Harris can do it for sure. Yeah. Harris, can you pretend like, you know, to be my face? Yes. Okay, I'm going to speak very slowly. Yes, very slowly. Yes. Okay, I have a question for Carlotta. Do you believe, Carlotta, do you believe that we should be pronouncing regenerativo instead of just regenerative?
Absolutely. But isn't that hard for many people?
Regenerativo.
Yes. We are all regenerativo. I love it. I love it. It adds so much global flair to it. And now, me with Harris, together we will be introducing a person who has been working on clean tech before it was cool. I would like you all to focus your eyes on Mr. Alistair Gould, who will take you to regenerative school.
And thank you to Carlotta for all of the art and heart that you have brought and woven into every fabric of the Design Science Studio. We love you. And your art is amazing.
Thank you, Roxy, really. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this experience.
It is an honor to weave with you. Back to you, Harris.
Back to you, Alistair.
You're muted, darling.
We cannot hear you, Alistair.
Thank you. I'll start again. Schoolboy error. Honoured to be here. I'm here in the High Weald in Sussex, about 50 miles south of London. It's an ancient woodland area. Where the project is based is called Furnace Brook. The furnace being the furnace that was an iron ore furnace here 300-400 years ago. What was the precursor to the Industrial Revolution. So there's a lot of history here. What I'm going to talk about briefly, I'll share a few slides in a moment in the video. Just talk briefly about the crew I have with me here. First of all, most importantly, my dear beloved wife. Like me, she's from London. She's also a 5th generation Pearly Queen, for those that may or may not know what they are. And that's a whole different presentation, a different time. But safe to say that she spreads fun, community and jollity, and tries to balance out my seriousness sometimes, which is maybe a bit tough, but anyway, she does a great job. And then the other team members I'm fortunate to have working with us here are working in the realm of permaculture principles and trying to restore and regenerate the land. And then finally, we've got a sort of wider crew that I work with over the last 15 years. We're part of the Carbon Free Group, where we're connecting innovations and innovators to do our best to decarbonize the built environment and then also to restore ecosystems. And we're fortunate to be supported by a group of elders. And 2 of those actually did meet with and had some chats with Buckminster Fuller himself many moons ago. So my project is called Calyx. So I'll just tell you a bit about it. So if I can have the first slide, please. Sounds like a university professor here, but I've handed this over to others. So is that coming through, that slide?
Yeah, just give me 1 second. I had your video first, so give me
first slide and then we'll go on to the video. That's all right. So this is a physical space, as you would have probably gathered. So we've got 15 acres of land and lakes here in a wonderful secluded setting and pretty remote for southern England. Nowhere's really that remote around here. And so how we're working is within the context of organic approaches to projects and with the context that the project itself has a 10-year life time span. So following the design science decade and also mindful of which I think is going to be launched in June, the UN decade for ecosystem restoration. And as Greta Thunberg says there, I think we reflect that in a micro way by the projects we work with and design collectively are always organic, and we certainly often don't know quite what it's going to look like when it finishes, and that's always a really great thing because something unexpected comes along and enhances the individual designs. And my role here is really just a coordinator, or on a better day, maybe a choreographer, or indeed a sort of collective dream weaver. So if we I put together with the help of colleagues a fairly swift video, literally the week before the launch of the Regenaissance, Regenera rather. So with excuses for the quality, it will be updated in a few months' time. But if we can run the video, and then I'll just give you a few other updates after that.
What is being created here?
We're shaping the transformation of this 15-acre site into an arts, ecology and innovation hub. A key aim is to host creative arts activities and retreats that are responding to the climate and ecological emergency. We see initiatives like ours helping bridge mankind's disconnect from nature at this critical time.
Tell us about the team.
Our core team weaves together experience and expertise in various disciplines, including permaculture, horticulture, architecture, regenerative design and community building. We're harnessing this collective wisdom to offer new models of systems change, leadership, education, resilience, health and well-being in connection with the natural world.
What stage are you at in developing the hub?
So far our focus has been on our inner journey, shaping our team, land work and co-creating an emerging offer. Since 2019 we have started with a series of prototype programs and micro-experiments in a range of areas including natural building, soil remediation and setting up a craft brewery. In particular, we are referencing and researching many of the themes covered by the Project Drawdown team. Through established partnerships, we are now working to achieve some core outcomes over the decade, such as achieving food and water sovereignty and energy autonomy, as we continue to explore many facets of regenerative design and ecosystem restoration. Our work is in collaboration with other similarly conceived land-based initiatives here in the UK, enabling connected innovations to be applied to models for generating and storing energy and producing food, which can align with the call on us all to restore the world's ecosystems. A key element of our prototyping work is focused on natural building techniques, such as you can see behind me, bearing in mind that nearly 40% of mankind's carbon emissions are in connection with the built environment.
Tell us about your partnerships and collaborations.
So far, our journey is being undertaken through a core partnership with 2 aligned community interest companies. As we believe much of our work is scalable and replicable, we are sharing our learning journey openly with other change-maker organisations and communities to create greater ripples of impact. In particular, our work is being shared through the Buckminster Fuller Institute's Design Science Studio, where we are engaging with the directions set for the second Design Science decade. In the spirit of Buckminster Fuller's approaches, we are inviting other artists, designers and innovators to connect with us as we create a safe, nurturing space for all visitors, whether their visits are for contemplation, action or play, or indeed all three.
What is your long-term vision?
We're supporting regenerative approaches that address the needs of the next generations as much of those of us living today, being focused on the transition from consumption-based lifestyles disconnected from the natural world towards sustenance-based approaches to living and working, where we can together act as a keystone species in restoring the natural world. Above all else, in these extraordinary times we are living through, our imaginations can be refreshed from the creative arts in all myriad forms, bringing to life the new narratives that can best guide us at a time when many of the old models we have adopted over the centuries are clearly no longer fit for purpose. We're looking forward to welcoming more partners and creatives as our project progresses. If you're a creator, innovator or artist, get in touch.
Alistair.
Sorry, I'm muted. I'm back with you. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Are we live? Can we talk to him? Is it good?
Yep, we got you. Yep.
Alistair, if you hear me, clap once. Good, perfect. Okay, good. I got a question for you, Alistair.
Yeah.
Because you've been doing this since the 80s, is that right? Now, I know that when I speak to people about something beyond sustainability, they look at me funny, they look at me weird. I'm wondering how they used to look at you back then, and how that's changed over the past 30 years. Can you tell us a little bit about that whole progression? And if the time is now, or if we're still if we're still light years behind in terms of consciousness and acceptance of the magnitude of change that has to go down.
Well, the inspiration I got on my journey was actually when I was in California and the States throughout 1979, and I saw great things happening, and I thought we were on the cusp of a proper sustenance revolution. But obviously things change rapidly, and the understanding of these approaches was not there when I tried to explain it in various different ways, but I always followed the principles from my experience in California of just building stuff, however small, and then that communicates better than words. Having said that, it's only really been in the last 10 years, even less than that, where we've started to find some fertile ground for communication, where people don't continue to look at us. I'm talking about lots of our colleagues here in a perplexed way, and sometimes, frankly, in quite an aggressive way, as I've experienced over a decade or so ago. But thankfully things are changing, and that the whole lexicon of just great awareness of climate ecological emergency and that term just helps raise awareness. But we need the models, as Buckminster Fuller has so clearly articulated over the years. So we're just doing our bit to shape those models.
Lovely. Ladies and gentlemen, can we get a lot of appreciation and love for Alistair?
Unmute yourselves. Woo, 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 woo. Woohoo.
Thank you. And can I just say, our next steps will include obviously welcoming fellow cohort members here, and also connecting up with other cohorts projects.
Lovely. All right, now.
And I have to say, there was a glitch in the matrix. We accepted Alistair, and he didn't get his acceptance letter. And then I found him somehow in the people who hadn't responded, and I was like, wait a minute, you didn't get your response. So we somehow managed to still wiggle you in, and you have been such an incredible contribution to this vision, and you have been a steward of this in the world for so long. Thank you for joining us, Alistair. It's so fun. I'm excited to weave with you for the decade.
Lovely. So it's very curious that so many of us are so playful in general, and we're exceptionally playful today. We've been having lots of fun. And as you know, we are human beings who really do not underestimate the power of play. This next speaker, this next cohort member, this next brother in arms is a human being who invited a game through which we play utopia, which is something that I also like to do with music. So for me, it is a great honor and pleasure to invite our next speaker. And I see that Amanda is super excited as well. She's clapping her hands. So maybe that means that you would like to introduce him. Is that right? Is that right? Is that right? Is that right? You look starstruck, my dear. You look starstruck.
Oh my gosh, I love Paulo so much. I love what he's doing. I got to play cohort virtually, which was incredible, his game, and I can tell you I've never experienced the win for all game dynamic more fully than that gameplay. And it changed me. It changed my ability to really see and feel the paradigm that we're stepping into, away from zero sum, in which I can only profit at someone else's expense, to fully we can all profit and create value that creates more value that creates more value when we work together. And I'm just so grateful, just personally, for that experience, and so excited to see Paulo grow and be resourced and have everything he needs to get his vision out in the world.
Thank you, my sister. And thank you, Jurgis. So it's a delight to be here amongst you beautiful people, and also just to be able to, you know, taste visions like Alistair's and Coco, as we call her in the Cohado game space. So thank you for those amazing visions, which really span, you know, this world from, you know, the treachery that's happening all over the planet, to the exquisite visions of the future. And, you know, that's really the space we're working in, and that's the only space we have. So, so we're going to be actually offering our final design science Cohado game. If folks want to do it, we are testing a virtual version of it, which seems to be working. And that will be happening a half an hour after this segment. So I'm in Eastern time, so 4:30 Eastern, 1:30 Pacific. So you can find that in the Presence event area. And so I wanted to say that now because I knew I would forget to say it by the end. So, this afternoon, I thought, you know, we've been spending a lot of time in the game space. We also had an Above Zero episode, which is our program looking at how we move into that plus some space, where we're not looking at how far away from zero we can get, but we're saying, no, we need to step up our game in many ways. And so it was beautiful to be able to offer those spaces here. And there's another dimension of Cohado that we have not talked about, which is the oracle. And I'll pull a Mel and I'll reveal our Cohado set, which is right here. And this Cohado set is a set that our first production set, which is a very limited edition handmade bamboo box that has lots of beautiful things inside, extra tray, and it has all of these pewter Cohado pieces. And we're going to be doing a Kickstarter within a couple of months to build both the virtual set, which was the virtual game that was developed in the Design Science Studio. This virtual space was inspired by tools that we learned through this amazing collaborative space. And we will also be producing a People set, which is a very affordable set that will be used to train young people all over in entrepreneurship, and using that as a model for them to learn everything from the production side to the distribution side to sales to marketing and every aspect of entrepreneurship, so they can do their own things, but it will also help us spread our tools. And one of the tools that we have is Cohado actually began about 13 years ago now. And the first set, I did not know how to play the game for about 3 years. And I realized literally as I experienced the download of what Cohado was the first moment I thought about it, it was immediately obvious to me that it was an oracle. And so we have created, we have this lovely oracle book which tells you how to actually read the Cohado game pieces. And we also have these beautiful cards in all of the colors of Cohado. And so we thought today that it would be a blessing to offer a reading to the Design Science Studio pulling a bone for the studio to launch its journey into the future of these next 10 years. And the first time you pull a card or pull a bone from the set is called your soul bone. And that's the bone that anchors who you are as a being. And the soul bone remains with you. That's like who you is. It's like your DNA out of the 28 pieces, and you can invert them, and it's a different soul bone. So there's lots of almost 50 different readings that you can get out of this space. And so every other time that you pull a bone, it is a temporal bone. So it speaks to you of what this moment calls. And in the first reading, it is both the soul bone and it is a certain time. So I will share both of those aspects of that with you. And I see Harris has been stepping in for so many beings today that I thought that we would, and I can see her on my screen, I thought we would invite her to, I'm going to shuffle these Cohort cards, and I would like to invite her to speak the moment that I should stop, and then we'll know that's the Design Science Studios card. Now, as you're feeling this, you have to energetically feel when it is the card for not only the 144 of us that played in this space, but really for the world in this 10-year launch of this 10-year thing. So you got to hold all that energy. As we were doing the second game, lovely Vincent was in the space, and he created a ceremonial space for Cohort. He said, because this is a ritual space that's created in all of this. So I'm invoking Vincent right now as we begin this journey. So, Iris.
Beautiful. Well, I would just like to invite everyone on the call to visualize your hands in my hands, and visualize that together our hands are hovered over the deck that Paulo is holding and shuffling. And collectively visioning not just the members of the Design Science Studio, but all the lives that we have touched, and feeling those ripples of concentric circles radiating out over the whole planet, forward in time, backward in time, holding the container of the Design Science Decade, and asking for guidance from clear, integrous sources to hold us as we move through the decade and the years to come.
Thank you, Iris. And now, when you are ready and you feel all of those hands you just evoked, thank you, that was lovely. We didn't plan any of that. That's just Harris jamming with Harris. That's my true last name. So this is Harris here. I'd like you to feel which number between 1 and 28 that rises to you, and whenever you
17.
do that. Okay. So we will go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. So I've placed the card face down, and what I invite you to do is tell me whether to flip it towards me, away from me, to the right, or to the left, or should we flip it up, round, and reverse it as Missy Elliott would do?
Man, I think we got to do like Missy does, right? Like,
Okay.
if that's
Flip
an
it up.
option.
Yeah, flip it up, round, and reverse it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to flip it up, round, and reverse it. Woo! So the card that we have chosen is the 2 on the bottom and the 6 on the top, which, so the 2 is relationship. It's like face to face. It's like we are each other's mirrors. It's like the yin, the yang, the lightness and the dark, the up and the down, right? And the 6 is community. It's the entire wireframe of the universe. So I'm going to read you those 2 readings quickly here. So we always read from the bottom because the bottom is like the root of the tree that sustains us, nurtures us, supports us, stabilizes us. It's the ancestors, it's the past. And then that line in the middle is the present. And the top is how we interact with others. It's the branches of the tree. It's how we reach out. And it's also where our fruit comes from, the fruit we bring. So in the root position, I'm going to read the 2 itself first. The 2 is the mirror. It is otherness, that which shows us who we are. It is the binary, the feminine and the masculine, the yin and the yang, lightness and darkness. It is the up, the down, the in, the out. The 2 is all about relationship. It is the line that differentiates everything. When 2 appears in the lower position, it is about anchoring in relationship, and it is also about seeing the mirror in the world around us. It is investing in cleaning the glass so that we are able to clearly see and embrace alternative perspectives. Since it's in the lower position, it is a call to root in supportive relationships. The 2 at the bottom also calls us to hold the balance in opposition. F. Scott Fitzgerald reminds us that the test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold 2 opposed ideas in the mind at the same time and still continue to function. Rooting.
Paulo,
Yes.
sorry, I just got word that we're at time, and I wanted to just let you know.
Okay. Thank you. I'll just finish this, and then you will have to come to the Cohort game space to hear the rest. And I'll share these readings to be distributed. Rooting in this understanding of not polarizing thinking through opposition, rather opening to see the synergies in place that seem to be mutually exclusive, is critically important to rooting in the 2. And Jurgis?
Brother.
Yes, I have a bit of a sound device. Could I share this while you're introducing the next being?
I love that idea. Please put the sound, put down the foundations,
Okay, so this is a panda drum.
We are now going to invoke a magical being on stage. One that has actually already manifested to me personally that her presentation has a lot to do with what you have presented here, which is the beautiful relationship between black and white, the dark and the light. Now, if you check llaria's bio, you will find many, many, many interesting things, but I know what she really is. She is a transmutational, transdimensional, social magician. And so now it is my pleasure to introduce and give the fair stage to the beautiful, unique, and always fantastic and marvelous Llaria Forte.
Wow. May I go home? Amazing. Thank you for this flowing introduction. I will share with you my screen now. and start this presentation. So now I invite everyone to join me in this journey into the unknown, to stay open, curious, and uncensored, to co-explore and co-generate with me, with us, this flowing creative stream of collective consciousness on life and living systems. Take 3 deep breaths. Gently let go the things you know. Drop your body, drop your mind. Forgot who am I, what I'm doing here today, who you are, and what you're doing today. Let's cross together the boundaries of screens and digital lines to co-arise, co-evolve together as living, breathing, interrelated and interdependent organism in this being time ingrained, embedded into Indra's net unity of space, time, and being. Enter with me the Cosmic Planum. As physicist David Bohm with great beauty define it, space is not empty. It's full, a plenum as opposed to a vacuum, and is the ground for existence of everything, including ourselves. The universe is not separate from this cosmic sea of energy. This is how everything started one day in my mind, maybe. To start exploring, just plug yourself into this plenum and share what emerges spontaneously from this cosmic sea of energy we experience together, energy and matter we are exchanging right here, right now, in the form of random words, meaningful sentences, or a long string of thoughts. This is how everything started. How did this exploration into life and living systems start for you? Where will this exploration end? This is how everything started, maybe, one day in my mind. Fernando Pessoa, in the Book of Disquiet, wrote, "My soul is a hidden orchestra. I know not what instruments, what fiddle strings or harps, drums, and tambura I sound and clash inside myself. All I hear is the symphony. And my mind, yes, is a hidden orchestra. All I sense and stream is the symphony, nature, nurture, narratives, native wisdom, non-self, non-sense. What do you sense?" Unity, awe, love, nature, narrative, orchestra. The origin of we, a collective story of regeneration. This is how everything started, maybe one day in my mind. A collective story of regeneration arising and unfolding harmoniously, unconstrained and undivided, at the intersection of multiple dimensions and planes of existence. All beings move through many cycles of birth, life, death, and rebirth, regeneration, and regeneration happening from the individual to the collective, from the collective to the individual. Everything that is alive is going through this process of arising, regenerating, repairing, passing away, decomposing, reintegrating, and returning. So it all started with a series of questions. What is life and how did life originate? What is life? For me, life is what is contained from 0 to 1 up to infinity. Nature always maintains the condition conducive to life. 4.5 billion years ago, a tiny planet arises, a pale blue dot. We call it Earth. We call it home. We call it mother. We call it father. We call it ground of our existence. About 4.5 to 3.5 billion years ago, life on Earth appeared, an inextricable tapestry of beauty. Francis Cook, a Buddhist scholar, wrote, "Far away in the heavenly abode of the great god Indra, there is a wonderful net which has been hung by some cunning artificer in such a manner that it stretches out infinitely in all directions. In accordance with the extravagant tastes of deities, the artificer has hung a single glittering jewel in each eye of the net. And since the net itself is an infinite in dimension, the jewels are infinite in number. There hang the jewels glittering like stars, in the first magnitude, a wonderful sight to behold. If we now arbitrarily select one of those jewels for inspection and look closely at it, we will discover that in its polished surface, they are reflecting all the other jewels in the net, infinite in number. Not only that, but each of the jewels reflect in this one jewel is also reflecting all the other jewels, so that there is an infinite reflecting process occurring. Life is much more than a continuum. As evolutionary biologist Lynn Margulis put it, bacteria are much more of a continuum. They drop their genes all the time. Like we say in What is Life? It's going swimming in a swimming pool, going in blue-eyed and coming out brown-eyed, just because you have gulped the water. They just pick up genes, they throw away genes, and they are very flexible about that. So how do you sense this multidimensional web of life? As Alan Watts described it, imagine a multidimensional spider's web in the early morning covered with dewdrops, and every dewdrop contains the reflection of all the other dewdrops. And in each reflected dewdrop, the reflection of all the other dewdrops in their reflection. And so ad infinitum. I sense this multidimensional web of life through collaboration, cooperation, co-creation, and co-evolution. The seeds of these two projects, of these two experiments, are initiated and planted inside of this fruitful garden called Living System Collaboratory Design Science Studio, would not exist without the collaboration and cooperation between individuals, that drives evolution and symbiogenesis of ideas. These two projects are collective experiments to catalyze individual and planetary healing through stories and through experiences. Both experiments operate at the intersection of science, technology, art, and contemplative practices. Both projects experiment on consciousness, perception, and cognition. Both projects blend Western and Eastern philosophies and practices, applying holistic system thinking to restore mind, body, planet unity. Both social innovation venture foster transdisciplinary dialogue and reflection and exchange, pointing future path forward. Both projects represent, for me, for all of us, new ways of co-creating and share common vision of fostering planetary regeneration, fully embracing wholeness.
I just want to
Thank you all the cross-pollinators, the weavers, the luminous mind that made these projects possible, that made this project so beautiful, and yeah, make my journey absolutely fabulous. So explore our stream, explore more, www.coevolutionar.one, www.experienceroom.plus, or contact me, llaria@llariaforte.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Llaria.
Thank you.
Llaria is such a dedicated creator. She has been on the forefront of being entirely focused on shifting towards these radical futures for a very long time. As a researcher, as a scientist, as a regenerative activist, her artistry has been so expanding for my heart, soul, spirit, and constantly Llaria has been like, how can I help? How can I help? I'm here with you. Okay, we can do this. Let's go. We have this. All right, decade. Let's do it. And it shows you did not one, but two projects, and you have refused to do them alone. You have brought everyone along, always curious and receptive, and it shows. It's such an honor to be collaborating with you and to see just the beginning of the sprouts. There's been so much that would never have been the same without you, that you have touched. And I love you dearly, and I'm so grateful to have you as such a big part of the studio and the team. Llaria is a part of our team as well. Thank you, Llaria.
Thank you so much.
Oh.
And now, Roxy, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Are you excited?
Yes.
Are you excited?
I'm so excited.
Are you very excited?
I'm very excited.
I know you're very excited. Very excited.
I'm very.
And I think we both have a reason to be very excited.
We do.
And you know what? Excitement is contagious. So let's transmit excitement into the room so people know exactly how excited they should be. We do like come up, it's kind of like, yeah! Because you get the opportunity to introduce your mentor, somebody who's very special to you. That's right.
Yeah.
One more bout of excitement.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Jürgen. I do. I get to introduce my mentor. Yay. I have to say, everyone, mentors make the world go round. They do. Rosie von Lila is one of, I have three mentors, Rosie, Ray, and Marcy Gray. They're all really incredible and have helped me at pivotal times in my life. And Rosie saw me and believed in me and empowered me to do things that I maybe wasn't qualified to do yet. Coached me, believed in me, and was always playful, professional, and another good word that starts with a P that isn't in my brain. I'll think of another one that doesn't start with a P, which is just magnificent. One of the smartest, most brilliant women I have ever had the honor of knowing, much less working with, much less having as someone who cares and believes in me so much. She now works at the intersection of high-powered finance, public policy, and human flourishing. I met her working for the Burning Man organization, and I came with her in her wing to produce the Global Leadership Conference until eventually she said, all right, now you do it without me. And she has continued on to Wall Street and with a couple of stops at the Pentagon. She guides numerous programs where humans transform their lives to access more personal power to be a contribution to humanity. You have stopped at no bars to following what you have seen in the most clarity will help create the biggest impact in this world to support our flourishing and transition. And it is my greatest honor to introduce you as a part of this beautiful container that I have had the honor of stewarding. I love you. Thank you for being here, Rosie.
The third P is polymath.
Polymath.
I accept. I accept this.
Powerhouse.
Powerhouse, for sure.
Roxy, that's the most heartfelt introduction I've ever received, and it means the world to me. You got me a little spooey, so thank you. And Amanda, it's really good to see you. It's great to see so many familiar faces and be here with you today, and to celebrate this occasion of the birth of the Regenaissance. It's a very exciting period for human history. So I am going to share with you today a very personal story that has taken bravery for me to put out into the world. Hold on, I just realized I didn't share my screen with you. 1 second, I hit the wrong button. All right, here we go. There we go. Okay, so this is a very heartfelt personal story that has taken bravery for me to put out in the world. And I'm sharing this with you. I'm sharing it for all humans who care about equality of opportunity for all people. Hang on. There we go. My name is Rosie von Lila. You can find me on Twitter at rosievonlila.com. A couple of points about my background in regeneration. So I'm a member of the Nexus community. That's a global community. And I was one of 3 co-founders of the lab on regenerative culture. I also, when I moved to New York, started building an investment firm focused on regenerative infrastructure finance. And in 2015, I was introduced to John Fullerton and his white paper on regenerative capitalism, how universal principles and patterns will shape our new economy. And that has greatly informed how I view our economics. So what does regeneration have to do with racism? In my mind, regeneration is about repairing what damage has been done in whatever context it is. And clearly, there's massive opportunity for humanity to regenerate our human relationships, both on the micro, the personal level, and on the macro, civilizational level. An important point today is that social regeneration starts on the inside. It starts here. And so today I'm sharing with you a bit about my personal journey on this topic. And without further ado, this is where I grew up. I grew up in a small college town in Northern California with a population of 12,000 people. I went to a tiny school, which was so small that they combined the grades. This is my 2nd grade class along with the school's 1st grade class. Demographically, my hometown is about 75% people whose skin looks like mine. And for being so small, my class was very diverse. I went to school with a number of 1st-generation Portuguese American kids, some American Latinos, some African Americans. And when we were in the next grade with the 1 grade up kids, I went to with a couple Japanese American kids. And so it was remarkably diverse for being so small. That's me, obviously great hair day. I will tell you that one thing that while I spent 8 years at this school, one thing that I don't recall learning about was the reality of the history of slavery in the United States. And this was my high school. Similar situation, the majority of kids there had skin that looked like mine. And again, I don't recall being exposed to the reality of the history of slavery in the United States. I moved to San Francisco to go to university. Population there is about 800,000 people. The demographics there are it's 50% people whose skin looks like mine. It's 30% Asian American and 7% African American. I graduated from the University of San Francisco, which was very internationally diverse. I had tons of friends from all over the world, but I don't remember having a single Black friend. And I mention this because I don't think my story is particularly unique for people whose skin looks like mine here in America. Now, 2015 was an important year in my life. That was the year that I moved to New York City. And when people ask me what's my favorite thing that I love about New York, I always say the very first thing is that I love the diversity of people here. I love that every single day I get to interact with all kinds of people from all over the world. And it makes this place extraordinarily rich and vibrant and interesting and fun. So before I moved to New York, I had for years been asking myself this question, which is central to today's story, but we will come back to this. Now, after I moved to New York, I started working in the finance industry, and I joined as a member of this organization, which is called New America Alliance, where I now serve as a board member for the last 4 years. New America Alliance advocates on behalf of Latino and diverse and women investment fund managers to ensure that they have fair consideration in access to investment capital. Our advocacy work has catalyzed public pension programs, which manage the largest pools of capital in the world. We've catalyzed public pension programs to move billions of dollars under the management of outstanding, diverse investment managers. Now, if you care about equity, this is one of the ways to significantly move the needle. And I'm proud of the work that we do through this organization. And it brings me great joy to think that the members of this organization, some of whom you see here, who are now very successful investors, were either first-generation Americans with immigrant parents, or they were immigrants themselves. And to me, the members of this organization represent the success of the American dream. One of my biggest passions is telling stories and interviewing interesting people. I started a podcast and a show called What Comes Now, where we discuss books and everything that brings people together or pulls us apart. And as part of the show, I ran a live event series back when we could do live events. And I invited extraordinary leaders to come on and share their stories. And what they all had in common was that they're all people of color. And I share this because I've been in this space of interacting with diverse people for a long time now and doing this work. Now, as I learned more over the years, this question would stay with me. How do we end racism? Now, around this time, I happened upon this. Unchained Memories is a 2003 documentary film, and it tells the stories of former slaves who were interviewed back in the 1930s. The film includes a dozen A-list actors, and those A-list actors are emulating the former slaves telling their stories. The slave narratives are the most accurate documentation that exists regarding the everyday activities of enslaved people in America. The slave narratives serve as the personal memoirs of more than 2,000 former slaves. And here's how those stories came to be. Nearly 70 years after slavery ended, the narratives were created in the 1930s by the federal government through a project that was called the Federal Writers Project. Those writers interviewed thousands of former slaves across 17 states. And this oral history project, it yielded an extraordinary set of 2,300 autobiographical documents known as the Slave Narrative Collection. And you can find that in the Library of Congress. And also you can watch this film, Unchained Memories, for free on YouTube. Not long after experiencing the slave narratives, I went here. This is the National Museum of African American History and Culture. This place is amazing. It opened in 2016 in Washington, D.C., and it's gorgeously designed and exhibited. And what this picture doesn't show is that 60% of the building is underground. So when you go inside, you can go down into the sub-basement floors. And the way that you get there is through this elevator. And this elevator has a glass shaft where the shaft is painted black, and it's got white years painted on it as you go down. And you start all the way in present day, and it drops you down 70 feet, down to the 1400s. And the elevator opens up to this room. Now you can't tell here, but this room is actually quite dark. And this area was designed to be reminiscent of the hull of a slave ship. It's dark and crowded. And when I was there, it looked more like this, packed with people. And this was where I had what would be a life catalyzing moment for me. Here I was someone who stands for equality, really cares about all people, loves all people, loves discussing ideas, even with people who disagree, like when we disagree. And so here I am in this museum. And as I'm walking through this particular room, taking it all in, I kept bumping into people. And on that day when I was there, I was one of very few people who had light skin. And so I was aware of this. And I also had the experience that I was a guest in this space. And so I was hyper aware of my skin color. And as I bumped into people, which was inevitable, thanks to the design of the place, I would say, excuse me. However, it wasn't my normal, strong, powerful, excuse me, I accidentally bumped into you. It was more like, oh, excuse me. And like I was shrinking. And later I was reflecting on my own discomfort. I was like, why was I having that experience? And I realized that if I had bumped into, say, those two guys on the right of your screen with the gray and the blue shirts, if I had bumped into them, I would have said, excuse me. And I realized that I had a fear that I was going to upset, say, this Black man over here or this Black woman over here, simply because of their skin color. I was afraid that I was going to upset them and they were going to respond differently. And this was a huge realization for me. And I remember years ago, so going back to that question, how do we end racism? How do we end racism? I remember years ago coming across a video of a woman on YouTube, and she was a Black woman, and she said, don't come to me asking me how to solve your racism. That's your job to figure out. So here, I had come aware that I was treating someone differently. I was responding to them differently because of their skin color. And I asked myself, what is there to do here? And I said, well, if you truly are committed to treating everyone with dignity and treating everyone with equal dignity, then treat everyone with equal dignity. That's all that there is to do for you in this situation. And so that's what I've done every day since then. And it's been a remarkably transformative experience for me. So moving on, as I continued through the museum, I came across this display, which is a whip artifact. And after watching the slave narratives, I learned the extent to which this tool was used to implement crimes against humanity. And as I stood there looking at the whip, I focused on the tip of the whip, and I became present to the reality that on this particular artifact, there is human flesh and blood on it, and it's likely mixed with salt and chili powder that the torturous overseers would rub into the open back wounds of a human being as they were hurting them. And I stood in front of this, and just in the same way when I'd watched the slave narratives, I sobbed as I took this in. And I then noticed who had donated this artifact. It was Oprah Winfrey. And that brought me present to the slow yet eventually dramatic change that has been won at great sacrifice. What I mean by that is Oprah Winfrey is the richest woman in the world. And so while it may be easy to overlook it, in the vast majority of ways that we measure, we human beings are overall better off than our ancestors. after I finished that and went upstairs, I'd been told about this room. This is the final experience that you can step into before emerging from the below ground and going to the upper levels of the museum. And in this room, there's moving quotes that are carved into the walls. And I sat here and I just sobbed after having taken all of this in, because I had come present to the reality of this country's history that I had never been exposed to before. I had come present to how ignorant I had been about it. And I came to realize that this is not just Black history that's represented here. This is our shared American history. Now, there is an argument that goes like this. It says that structural racism doesn't exist. And there are no laws in practice now that prevent any man or any woman from achieving what any light-skinned man can achieve. And the last part of that argument is that success is built on your own merit, your determination, and your hard work. And while I do agree that success is born of believing in yourself, taking aligned action, and being relentless and unstoppable in the face of adversity, which is inevitable, some people have a more difficult lot in life that they were born into. And while it may be true that currently in the US, there are no laws in practice now that prevent any person from achieving what any light-skinned man can achieve, that doesn't acknowledge that there are still residual effects from past laws and policies that are no longer in place. My learning led me here. Caste is a rigid social hierarchy that people are born into. It's a term that anthropologists and social scientists use to describe examples such as the oldest caste system in the world, India's, which has thousands of tiers in the hierarchy, and which was outlawed in 1950, yet its effects remain, which you can see well illustrated in the 2021 film, The White Tiger. Other examples are the Nazi caste system for German Aryan supremacy in the 1930s, and the caste system that predated the Nazis and informed their Nuremberg laws, which was the American caste system. This is the historical caste system in the United States. Caste is an artificial hierarchy. It's a graded ranking of human value in a society, and it determines things like your automatic standing in society at birth. It determines the respect that you're granted and the benefit of the doubt you receive. It even determines your access to resources and the assumptions of competence that strangers and other people will hold about you. It even determines who's beautiful and who's not beautiful. Caste is the underlying infrastructure that we can't see, but is there undergirding inequalities and injustices. So how do we know that this was the historical caste system in America? Well, we can look at the histories of legislation and policies at the local, state, and federal level. And a great book on one important area, land, property, and housing, is The Color of Law, A Forgotten History of How Our Government Segregated America by Richard Rothstein. Across history in the last approximate 10,000 years, the majority of cultures in the world, but not all of them, there's been a caste hierarchy based on gender. Now, how do we know this was so? Again, we can look at the history of legislation and policy, back a certain number of millennia, to see who was allowed to do what. For instance, for 144 years, women were not allowed to vote. They were excluded from voting because of their gender category. This served to keep women in a specific lower place in the caste hierarchy. Or we can look at the legislation that selected who was or was not allowed to marry and who was or was not allowed to reproduce. In the early 1900s, the pseudoscience of eugenics was practiced, even though by the 1920s, eugenics was debunked and unscientific and racially biased. This idea of improving the human race by controlling who could and could not have babies informed laws here in the United States. And these laws targeted African Americans, Latino Americans, and Asian Americans. This screenshot here is from a video, which along with other educational resources I've pinned at the top of my Twitter. You can go there, click on the link, and it'll take you to a spreadsheet with some resources. So this statement is accurate, and here's why. Caucasian is an outdated word that was based on pseudoscience. It's one of 3 categories of race that was invented along with the creation of the eugenics pseudoscience. The 3 made up and unscientific categories are Negroid, which covered people from Central and Southern Africa, Mongoloid, which included people from East Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Arctic region of North America, and then Caucasoid. All of the people here represented in these pictures fall into the category Caucasoid. And this quote unquote science, pseudoscience, was developed in the 1780s. And these 3 race categories were based on skeletal anatomy and cranial differences. So very unscientific. And all these people here, Caucasoid has included people from Europe, Western Asia, Central Asia, South Asia, North Africa, and the Horn of Africa. So it's not a scientific, accurate term. Now, we don't use Negroid or Mongoloid anymore because they're outdated. Caucasian is outdated, and it's time to abandon its usage. And so I reject this categorization because it's inaccurate, not because I'm interested in being politically correct. I'm interested in accuracy. I'm interested in things that are real, not things that are made up like this. So I reject it because it's inaccurate, unscientific, and it's outdated. And if your skin looks like mine, one of the ways that you can abandon the caste system is by freeing yourself from identifying as Caucasian or white. It is old. So it is worth noting that the American caste system is dying. So as I just mentioned, I also reject being called white. And I have to tell you, it's taken bravery for me to own this and actually state this publicly. And I'm finding that the more that I share it, the more that people want to talk about it. I think that it's a really important conversation because the designation of white was created to support eugenics and to support the transatlantic slave trade. Slavery has existed for all of humanity, predated the transatlantic slave trade. It wasn't race-based or skin color-based prior to that, and it wasn't for life. And so after the 1400s, this designation of so-called white and black, and white has changed over the times depending on who was in the in groups and who was in the out groups. So it really is time to give up this word. I do want to say I'm not a white apologist in any way. I don't apologize for what I was born into. It was beyond my control and my choice. And after all that I've learned, after discovering my own ignorance, after awakening to my own unwitting participation in the caste system, I now know which team I'm playing for, which is I'm playing for Team Human. So no matter what your skin looks like, if you continue to group people as white, Caucasian, if you want to continue to use that language, you're using language that perpetuates the American caste. An outstanding book on the topic of caste is Caste, the Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson. She describes caste as being the infrastructure and the skin color, caste is the infrastructure and skin color or race is a signal or a cue as to where a person fits in the caste system. And it's a metric that's used to determine your assignment in the caste system. She notes that caste is a term and a concept that's existed for thousands of years. Hello, India. While the concept of race is only a few hundred years old. So caste is the bigger conversation, and caste is more precise and comprehensive. The caste system is an artificial hierarchy, as I mentioned. It was invented by humans, and it grades you on basics based on certain characteristics and ranks you in society according to those characteristics. Now, while most people whose skin looks like mine, they might not be aware of it, but there's a significant cost to our country for having this caste system. Unfortunately, that conversation is increasingly coming to light in the national discourse. And it's an advantage that those of us whose skin looks like mine, we get to learn about caste rather than having to experience it on a regular basis. I should say experience its negative effects, because we experience its positive effects all the time. I should say it's not positive effects, it's the beneficial effects for those who are in the dominant caste. So some examples. Drew Brees, who used to be the quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, he took some heat last year online, to which Wendell Pierce, the actor, he wrote to Drew sharing about his own father's experience as an American. Even though his father was a World War II veteran, his father was still subject to segregation and racial violence as an African American in this country. Amy Cooper, who lied to 911 on video for the world to see, said, I'm calling the cops. I'm going to tell them that there's an African American man threatening my life. Now, this is where knowing your history is very important, because there's a long history of this narrative of Black men in America being a threat to white women. And I use the term white here because it's historically significant. This was a narrative pushed through propaganda, such as the racist film Birth of a Nation from 1915. It was a narrative to drive fear amongst whites so as to reinforce the caste system and the idea that total domination of Black people was necessary. And the final story I'll share today is Tomi Lahren goes on The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. By the way, this photo alone demonstrates that the caste system is dying. You have a woman who hosts her own shows on TV, and you have a biracial South African man who hosts his own show on American TV. The caste system is real, and its effects are real, but it is dying. So Tomi goes on Trevor's show in 2016, and one of the many topics that they discussed was Colin Kaepernick. In the interview, Tomi expresses that she doesn't approve of how Kaepernick is protesting, to which Trevor asks, how should he protest then? And he asked this question 4 times, and she either can't or won't answer the question. And after the fact, Trevor makes a video and he points this out, that she never addresses how she thinks someone should protest to address their grievance. Now, I'm inclined to say that she can't answer how he should protest, because this isn't actually about protesting. I'm inclined to say that she can't or won't answer because perhaps she, like me previously, hasn't exposed herself to the realities of our shared American history. Regardless, this really isn't about protesting. What this is it's the caste system at work. Here we have a member of the dominant caste decreeing how things should go. And what's happening in this narrative of this isn't the right way to protest is an attempt to exert control. It's an attempt to dominate a situation. And here we come to an interesting point. The caste system operates through a culture of domination. Domination is a way to keep people in their place. This was from a conversation that Donald Trump had with US governors last year when riots were breaking out all over the country. And I listened to the audio, I personally transcribed this. And here's what we know. If you want to have a free society where everyone has equal opportunity and where innovation happens and creativity flourishes, domination doesn't work. It may have worked for those dark periods of authoritarian rule in history, but the long arc of history shows us that the human desire to live freely is one of the greatest driving forces in existence. So while domination might work temporarily, it requires ever more inhumane violence to force compliance into a rigid hierarchy of control. And we're going to take a quick side trail for a moment here before we wrap up. This is the work of Dr. Riane Eisler, who is a national treasure. Her work has given rise to a framework for making sense of the crimes against humanity that have riddled human history. Riane is a multi-time best-selling author. She's a social scientist and a cultural historian. She's also a survivor of the Holocaust. In her 1987 book, The Chalice and the Blade, she introduces the partnership domination social scale. She says all systems exist on the social scale, and they're either oriented more towards domination or partnership. There's no such thing as a pure partnership system. There might be something such as a pure domination system, but you're somewhere along the scale. So on a domination system, you have a hierarchy where there are in-groups at the top and out-groups at the bottom. It's a rigid hierarchy that requires domination to maintain. It requires force and fear. And what it results in is inequality. It ignores the economic value of caring for people and caring for the planet, and it results in violence and abuse and decreased freedom. Partnership systems, on the other hand, do have hierarchies in them. However, in them, everyone matters. Regeneration calls these hierarchies of actualization, where the people at the top support the people in the bottom so that all ships can rise. This gives birth to an increase in liberty and expression. There's equality built into the system amongst all the different categories that we have for human beings. In partnership systems, care is valued economically at all ages and all stages of life. And what this leads to is human flourishing and creativity. You can learn more about partnerism. You can find Regeneration on Twitter at Regeneration Eisler, or go to partnerism.org, which gives a good summary of this work and leads to her more academic websites. So as I mentioned, while there may no longer be laws in practice that reinforce the caste system, the effects of caste are real and they're still happening today. Ask any Black realtor about their experiences today, and if they're willing to be candid with you, they will likely share with you stories of discrimination and exclusion that still happen today as a result of the exclusionary laws and codes from prior generations. Caste is real and it is dying. So what can you do to quit the caste system and help it become a thing of the past? Obviously, you can educate yourself. You can learn about our shared American history so that you can make informed choices in your own life rather than be manipulated by others' narratives. As I mentioned, I put together some educational resources, which you can find on my Twitter. And next, you can use your voice to spread the message that you want to abandon the dying American caste system. Very importantly, don't be a bystander. If you're committed to treating all people with dignity, match your actions to that. Specifically, when you witness someone being mistreated, speak up, get into action, say something, intervene in some way. Isabel Wilkerson, who wrote the book Caste, in that she has a chapter on her stories of flying first class as a Black woman. And they're pretty horrific stories. And in each story, all the people who were around witnessing this in public didn't say anything. And so that had me to say to myself, okay, it's really important to speak up when you see somebody being mistreated. Another way to get involved is to open up opportunities, build relationships with younger people, younger dark-skinned people, and open up opportunities for them that are aligned with where they want to go in life. It's very, very fun. Okay, let's see. And while I did say to use your voice, it's important to note that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So listen to women. We want to listen to Black women, we want to listen to Asian women, listen to Latinas, listen to Indigenous women, listen to all women. See every woman as an individual and hear what she has to say. And on that, here are 3 women I really appreciate. Isabel Wilkerson, you can find her on Twitter. Arlen Hamilton, an amazing investor. I interviewed her on my show, What Comes Now. You can listen to our episode. She is changing the finance industry in a really powerful way, and I love her story and what she's up to. And then Ava DuVernay, who's an amazing award-winning film director. She tells extraordinary stories. So I want to say thank you, and a reminder, regeneration is repairing the damage that has been done. Social regeneration starts as an inside job. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been a real pleasure being with you.
Thank you, Rosie. That was so powerful and so needed and so necessary. And I want to just thank you again for your courage to be a voice for this specifically in this time. And this is an incredibly important piece of what we're doing. We can't move to an equitable and just future if we don't address where we're at now and help dissolve and shift in these tides. So, and there's something really beautiful that's happening right now, is that Leah's song of Rising Appalachia is going to perform, who is like embodying everything that you just called upon all of us to do. So Thank you. I love you. And I so appreciate you. And I want to just invite everyone to just unmute yourselves and share your voices if you'd like to thank Rosie with your own voices before we transition.
Thank you, Rosie. Gratitude.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Peace.
Rosie.
Beautiful work, Rosie.
Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you, Rosie. David and Sophia.
And thank you, Leah. Leah Song, an artist of many forms, a worshiper of the wild, a storyteller, songcatcher, musician, poet, activist, known best for her role as the front woman of Rising Appalachia with her sister Chloe, has a prolific creative voice independently as well. Her music incorporates sultry vocals, rhythm, banjo, guitar, ballads, spoken word for storytelling, and an easeful arc of troubadour folk. Her music is based in the tradition of Southern soul. I'm from Tennessee, and the world roots music. I'm from Iran and Colombia, so I'm like, yes, and traces of the lineage of her ancestor to build bridges of song across many genres. When not touring, she works in visual arts, ceramics, woodblocks, metal arts, and painting. Her primary and perhaps sole language is that of the creative voice. She depends heavily on that courtship with the muses to make sense of this world. Song engages in social and political activism alongside her art and has studied with some of the greatest teachers of our time, including Carissa Pinochet Estes, Martin Shaw, Joanna Macy, Charles Eisenstein, Winona LaDuke, Sobhan Fusome, and Rosemary Gladscar. She is committed to gathering tools and teachings of creative resilience, mythology, ritual, and rewilding. Here together today, Leah, we have come to inaugurally celebrate the Regenaissance, a global movement bringing together revolutionary creators, systems thinkers, and organizations to imagine, collaborate, and co-create a world that works for 100% of life. And you have been a beacon for that for so long. We are honored to have you with us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What an amazing speaker to follow and to really be able to sink into that deep, deep, deep work. So thank you so much I got to sit with that whole incredible delivery of information. And I'm calling in from Atlanta, Georgia, where I was born and raised, which is a wildly wonderful and eclectic and powerful and palpable and diverse city that is also in the throes of some of our global tragedies right now. So it feels really powerful to be able to sit and soak in that very, very, very amazing lecture that we just received. And I had the incredible honor of seeing Isabel Wilkerson speak in person, which she was mentioned, and she's just an incredible, incredible gem. Equity and justice work has been a huge part of our lives here, both between understanding the urban realms of Atlanta, Georgia, and the rural stories of Appalachia, and deep, deep, deep into our work on the road. So that was just really inspiring. Thank you so much, Rosie. There's lots I will want to say and chat about and dig in, but I'll do my due diligence and I'll take us into a little bit of music. I think a lot of times the realm of art and music and poetry is the place where we can go so that our right brain, our logical mind can receive, and can kind of soak in. So I'm gonna just do a little bit of a love song, because in the wake of the state of our world, I think one thing we can do is just send a little bit more love out in every direction we can find it. And for me, that often comes in ballads. I'm in my family home, and like I said, this is the home I was born and raised in. Just right in a little tiny neighborhood in downtown Atlanta, Georgia. It's full of like murals and green spaces and skateboarding ramps. It's kind of nice to be here. It's really hot. So this is a bit of a swooner. And maybe if you all have been listening, take all of that palpable and powerful information that you just heard and soaked in, and just let some of it settle, make its way through your mind and through your body, and put it into muscle memory. I think that's the only way we can really start to change the direction of this crazy turning world, is one step at a time, slowly showing up at the table. Awkwardly, often. Vulnerably. Listening. Just showing up. So, wonder how it came to be that you and I, we don't need no sleeping. Stretch out your mighty bow and arrow. Mark your fingertips on my soul. 'Cause we know it's so beautiful the way we dance. Where we dance when the night is cold, and stretch out your mighty bow and arrow. Mark your fingertips on my soul. Cause in the South we move real slow, and we like the way sweat rolls off your brow, and we like the way honeysuckle climbs, and we drink just a little too much homemade moonshine, baby. I don't take no shit from you. That's how I know where to find your clues, and love, she don't move no other way. So she stays, so she stays. Ooh, yeah. Let me see the way your skin breathes, and let me watch your pirate ship dock set sail and leave, so I can unveil your style. Ooh, I don't take no. If I you let me unveil the way your star moves. The Zoom crowd goes wild. Thank you. I'm going to change my screen so I can see all of you. I like to see everybody. Yeah. So I'm a born and bred folk musician. I am second, third generation, really. And I learned the fiddle and the banjo from my mother. I'm in my mother's home. I'm in my father's home. He's on the front porch, and he's a deep folk artist. He's a painter. I brought out one of his paintings. This is a piece that we did together yesterday. He's always teaching me. So it's on like a ratty sheet of old computer paper, and it all fell apart, and we stuck duct tape all over it. But it's more about the act of creating together. Oh, thanks. My sister says, hey, she's on sabbatical. We're like the whole family's in the house. Mom, pops, sister, sweetheart, the wolf dogs, the whole thing. It's like the Brady Bunch over here. And, you know, we grew up in this really interesting realm. It's cool to be able to tell you about it from this screen. We grew up, you know, really deeply involved in our relationship to the urban South, and very, very in love with the culture around us and the creativity around us, and not very interested in our roots, you know, not very interested in the music that was coming out of our family home, and not very interested in our ancestry. And very, very slowly, we started studying and picking up the instruments of our family, of our livelihood. We're primarily Irish on both sides, and we spent a lot of time digging into our Irish roots. And Rosie, to go back to your talk again, part of the way that we built a realm of activism in this last several years, as the realms of activism have become more and more complicated to make sense of, you know, I really have always prided myself in being an activist and being in the front lines of social equity. And I think now there is so much hostility and there's so much aggression. It's really hard to know where to put your foot in. So we started a project called Singing Over the Bones, which is a 6-week course that we offer. We just started one last week, where we kind of guide a whole group of people through kind of finding their own ancestry and finding their own lineages, and really shifting this conversation of tokenizing, you know, and also of labeling, and really starting to understand, oh, you know, I come from an ancestry where there's a deep tradition of song, where there's a deep tradition of music, and learning a little bit more about the reverence of what's in your own bones and what's in your own blood, and how nuanced that is, and how very, very nuanced that is to each and every one of us, and how many of these identity terms are really being used, I think, to oppress, you know? So it's really, it's been a full, long part of my journey to slowly start to pick up the instruments of my family and the traditions of my family, and start to also learn the tools, the powerful tools, and also the hardships that have come from all of our bloodline. Which is where I learned this instrument, which, let me tell you, as a teenager, I did not want anything to do with a banjo at all. I thought it was the most mortifyingly embarrassing thing that my family could have ever done to me. They were going to play fiddle and banjo music in downtown Atlanta, Georgia, when I was definitely mostly wanting to listen to Outkast, and still mostly wanting to listen to Outkast, to be really fair. Andre 3000, if you are listening, Rising Appalachia really wants to collaborate with you. All right, so sorry, I digress. So I picked up this is a banjo, and it's the banjo is actually an instrument that it's thought of, the 5-string banjo is thought of distinctly as an American instrument, although it is the ancestor of an instrument called the akonting, and the akonting is a Senegalese folk instrument that was a 4-stringed gourd banjo, and this iteration traveled across the transatlantic slave trade and was brought into Appalachia and changed and added to a 5th string to it, and was very much played as the folk instrument and the rhythmic drum, the melodic drum, all across the Appalachians. It was a storytelling instrument. It was never radio played. It was never a commercial instrument, and it wasn't really brought into what it's thought of now in country and bluegrass music until much, much later in its life. So this is an old Appalachian banjo. It's my mother's. I don't have mine with me, but she's got good taste. And the style I play is called frailing, clawhammer. So you make a shape like this, and you always have a rhythm. It was the way that the rhythm was carried, and still is carried. So I'm gonna do a couple Appalachian ones for you. If she's still alive, if I do not find that girl, then I was sure to die. When I'm buried in my grave, Susanna, don't you cry. Oh, Susanna, don't you cry for me. I come from Alabama with a banjo on my knee. Oh, Susanna, don't you cry for me. I come from Alabama with a banjo on my knee. Susanna, don't you cry for me. I come from Alabama with a banjo on my knee. But Susanna, don't you cry for me. I come from Alabama with a banjo on my knee. Why, thank you.
Thank you. I can't believe you're here. You're one of my favorite people. Oh my God.
Oh, why, thank you.
And similarly in Swoontown.
Sweet. Well, swoon away because it's so awkward to play to a computer screen in your mom's living room. Great. It's great. Zoom life.
Zoom life.
Zoom life. I'm going to tell you guys more stories because that's my favorite part of this whole thing. So it just was so interesting to have that beautiful, beautiful conversation before this, and it really, really got my gears turning, you know. And I think I was thinking about it while I was playing that banjo song, and the reason that I slowly started getting back into folk music is because two things. Outkast put a song out with a blues harmonica in it, and I was like, oh, that's cool. My family does that. And then Ani DeFranco was an amazing mentor of mine, and she's on our most recent album, which was really extraordinary. And she put together a song with a banjo in it, you know. And I remember as a young, rowdy, kind of gangster teenager, we were gangster actually. That really started to like bring me back into this concept of like roots and folk music. And I didn't want anything to do with folk music. I didn't want anything to do with it at all. So it's interesting, you know, in this concept of the Regenaissance, you know, and that's been such a big part of our work, has been to understand where art can start to thread and cross weave and call forth a lot of us, and starts to really, I think, bring these concepts of identity and action and activism and regeneration and empowerment and systems changing into a place where you can actually feel it starting to live in the body. And I think that we're such a heady culture, and especially those of us involved in activism, you know, is like we're spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to fix this total messy world. And I think that's where art really starts to create some service. It brings some hummus in, and the hummus of the soil, not the hummus of the feasting, although that also. But you know, it starts to maturate and soften the places in us that are hardened and that are anxious and that are overworked or stressed or exhausted or hopeless, you know. And I think the old traditions of all of our lineages all around the world, all of the old traditions, they had tools and skills and rituals and practices for hardship and how to overcome hardship, how to grieve, how to celebrate. And we are living in an era where most of us, as my dear friend and co-collaborator Lydia Violet would say, we are most of us that are in North America diasporic people. We are living in a place where a few generations back we were not in the homelands of our ancestors. And that creates a cultural amnesia and a severance that I think we have yet to really identify and understand its impact. You know, we are, those of us in North America, and hopefully lots of you are here from all around the world, and I apologize for burdening you with the pains of our adolescent nation and its identity struggles. But those of us that are here, you know, we're really disconnected from those rituals, and the earth rituals, the practice of seed gathering, the song catching, the memory, the grave site of a great 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 grandparent. These little things that are actually enormous. They're enormous puzzle pieces to how to live a life. So I spend a lot of time chewing on that and thinking about, you know, how to respond and how to offer a little bit of balance in our own way. And I think that's been so much of what our music is trying to do. And then on a very different note, we're often the folk music band hired in at the Electronic Transformational Music Festival, and we're like the only band sometimes that doesn't have a laptop on stage, you know, and even that, just having like the resonance of wooden instruments in our lives, or, you know, singing an old Irish ballad after like a huge DJ dance party. It's like a very interesting space to hold. The sound engineers are like, what is that thing? And we're like, well, that's a guitar. And they're like, oh, where do we plug it, you know? And we often like haul all these instruments, double bass and drums and banjos, to stages where you just don't get a lot of the resonance of the old instruments. And I am not precious about it. I don't over romanticize anything, actually. I think all forms of creativity are valuable and valiant and worthwhile. But I do think there is something missing in our culture around old traditions, and I don't over romanticize all of them either. You kind of pick the parts that work and discard a lot, because there's plenty of old traditions that were not in service to any of us. But that has been such a driving force for our work, is to be able to find a place where we can bring some of the lineage and the reckoning of the ancestry that we come from, and also hopefully inspire that in the people that listen and the people that love the music, and gather that there's that there's a conversation or mini conversations to be held after the shows and at home and in your own living rooms, around bringing a little bit more of the artful path. And actually, Roxy, just to keep going in the storytelling kick,
yes,
I learned I picked up banjo and guitar because, like I said, it was something that I wasn't really very interested in as a teenager. I actually started traveling to Latin America, and I started learning banjo in southern Mexico, and then I got deeply, deeply enthralled with our South American neighbors and started studying the bolero traditions of Colombia and Cuba and Mexico, and really understanding what it meant to be a troubadour, and to be able to carry some of the traditions of my ancestry, and also then to offer those as like literal trade, to say, oh, I'll sing you a banjo song if you will teach me a bolero. So that's actually,
I love that.
Was a huge part of my musical upbringing, was to try and learn my traditions so that I could offer them as a traveler, and primarily all across Latin America, you know, just as deep into the traditions of the boleros as I could find. So when you gave your ancestry, I was like, oh, I'll do a Colombian one for you then.
And I love that you're actually in the South right now. My sister's also tuning in, who's in Tennessee. It's so we grew up in Nashville. So.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I have a side project called Appalachia, and it's the like crossroads and the bridges between the Appalachian folk traditions and the Latin American folk traditions. And I play with an Argentinian and a Costa Rican musician. And, you know, the thing about music is that it is a proper international language. And I don't think that we only need to be pious about just playing our own traditions. I think we need to know our own traditions. I think it's a really important part of self-knowledge. And then I think from there, you are such a more gracious traveler and such a more giving participant when you're out in the wider world. I mean, the world is chock full of so much beautiful tradition, and there's no reason why any one of us wouldn't fall in love with so many other ways of living and styles of music and styles of art. And I just think it makes you less of a hungry traveler and and more full. So you come in offering, you know. So I'll do one that I learned in Colombia. I learned guitar actually first in Cuba and then in Colombia, and I'm a novice player. It's the most recent instrument I picked up, and I found this wonderful guitar teacher in the streets of Cartagena, which was my favorite part of Colombia. And I traveled in Cartagena.
It's so good there.
Oh, it's so good. And then
So good there.
It's just like the same place, Cartagena and New Orleans. And I traveled and lived there, and then I took a sailboat. I volunteered and bartered my passage on a sailboat from Colombia to Panama, and then on a bus all the way back up to North America. So it's quite a journey. But I picked up this song, Cartagenera, from my amazing guitar teacher in Colombia. I'll try and do it justice. Paseando mi soledad por las playas de Marbella, yo te vi, Cartagenera, en el cascabel de tu risa, en el tibia noche de la luna, cuando te besa la brisa, yo siento, Cartagenera, siendo tu piel morena, Cartagenera, tu boca como guayaba madura, Cartagenera tus ojos, como nada perdura, Cartagenera morena, dorado por luz de luna, dorado por luz de luna, Cartagenera morena, dorado por luz de luna, Cartagenera morena, ay mamá. Paseando mi soledad por las playas de Marbella, yo te vi, Cartagenera, en el cascabel de tu risa, en el día noche de la luna, cuando te besa la brisa, yo siento, Cartagenera, siendo tu piel morena, Cartagenera tu boca, como guayaba madura, Cartagenera tus ojos, como nada perdura, Cartagenera morena, dorado por luz de luna, dorado por luz de luna, Cartagenera morena, dorado por luz de luna, Cartagenera morena, dorado por luz de luna, Cartagenera morena, ay mamá. ¡Yay!
¡Qué belleza!
Thank you.
Oh, I miss Cartagena.
Oh, I know so much.
So much. I haven't been to New Orleans though, which is crazy.
Well, New Orleans is our Cartagenera.
Totally.
That is ours. I wanted to get a little bit of a pulse for the people that are on here. I know this is going to go kind of out into the world in a wider way, but I love the ability to do a little bit of question and answer. And I don't have the full hour because we started a little late, but I've got still a little bit of time. So I wanted to see if there were any questions or even like conversation pieces that any of you wanted to throw into the chat with a little bit of an introduction of who you are in the world or your work in this world. I like to get just a little read, and it's hard to do that in Zoom. So if anybody has a little piece that they want to share or a little bit about a question about our work, I would love to open that conversation. And I'm going to gather a poem to read as well. So no pressure if that's not right now.
I just had one question. Have you ever, or do you know Butch Robbins, the banjo player?
I know of Butch Robbins. I don't know that music very well at all, but I know the name.
Okay, just wondering.
Did I put it on my list?
Well, I don't know. I was just thinking I might be able to arrange you being able to play with him.
All right.
Yeah, okay.
The more banjos, the merrier. We call it Banjo-Rama.
I think Amanda had something.
Yeah. Hi, Leah. Your music fuels me every day as I help steward this organization and sit on the deck of Spaceship Earth. And yeah, I'm just curious, kind of from your crow's nest on this spaceship, what are you seeing now coming out of the pandemic in terms of signs of life and regeneration, and kind of what are some of the brightest bright spots that you have in your horizon?
Totally. Well, I feel like it's been such an interesting year. I mean, it's been very full of tragedy, which we know a lot about. But I think it's also been very, very full of a wellspring of regeneration that nobody predicted and nobody really planned to have. And actually, there's been more front yard gardens planted. Just walking in the neighborhood, I see more fathers with their children than I've ever seen in my life. Everyone is home, and that creates some strain and for sure has some hardship, but I think it also creates a space where we have to slow down, and we have had to slow down. And most of us would have never, myself included, opted to slow down in any capacity at all, and everything was going faster and faster and faster. And I really hope that life comes back somewhat to some places of normalcy, and also that pace of life does not return, actually, and that there are ways that we can harvest the seeds of, and we've had to push through immense impatience, and we've done it globally. People have found inner realms of their own patience that they never really knew existed. And I do hope that is something that we have long-standing in our toolkit, as well as our front gardens. Literally, there are more gardens. People who never even thought about gardening were like, okay, I'm gonna pick up a couple tomato seeds because I'm stuck in my apartment in Manhattan and I've got an egg crate and I'll just plant tomato seeds. And you're seeing that tending of home. And for us as well, as musicians, we're not super domestic people. We're like kind of reluctant jet setters. And so just that part of it, I think, is a really interesting international exhale, for lack of a better word. On a more personal note, Rising Appalachia is releasing a new album, so we're really excited about that. And
oh my goodness, I'm so happy.
It's kind of a
I
secret.
listen to all of your songs probably like 1,000 times each.
Yeah, well, there's new one coming, and for us, it's been like we were all isolated all across the world, very far away from each other. And we came together for one live stream concert, and we booked the studio for a second day after that, just thinking like, oh, we miss each other, let's see what happens. And we made kind of a weird avant-garde, experimental, freak folk instrumental album, and it's coming, So on a personal note, we've just used the time to like stir the creative coffers. And hopefully there's going to just be so much more from there. You know, I live under a rock. I'm not very well informed. I don't have functional internet ever. I don't actually follow a lot of the technological advances, but I do trust that organizations and powerful players and movers and shakers are using this time to regenerate and to garner ideas and projects that we haven't had time to even investigate yet. So I am an optimist, reluctantly. I mean, no, that's not the right word. I am an optimist. It's tricky sometimes, but I stick to it. So we'll see. But I'm glad you listen all the time, and I would love to know more about Buckminster Fuller's Institute, and we're going to do a sailboat tour, and we're going to try and figure out how to only move like on horse and bicycle and go a lot slower and not jet set, and there's probably ways to collaborate in all kinds of ways that way. So.
Yes, let's collaborate. I love it.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, your song Make Magic just came to mind in terms of the like, it's tricky to be an optimist, the trick part of that, you know, like the trickster piece of it. I think we all need to be kind of like these optimistic tricksters in this time to make magic out of the smoke and mirrors.
Totally.
Yeah.
It is trickster time.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to just take care better of our families, you know, too. I mean, this is like, this whole pod life has been really interesting because you're like, all right, I better get a pod. Make sure that I'm, you know, hanging out in my mom's living room a little bit more often, just for good measure. So it is kind of trickster time. All of our cool points have gone away, you know? There's no like, we don't have like cool festivals and cool outings or anything. We just have to be like inwardly doing the work. And that's sort of an overused phrase, but it's pretty much where it's at now. Somebody asked me what the touring and gathering on the horizon is. And there's not a lot of live music scheduled yet in larger groups. But it's been actually really fun to do these smaller, most of our crew has side projects. I have a side project that I'm kind of doing with you all now called Leah Song, and our guitar player has a side project, and our drummer and Ngoni player have a side project. And these small shows have been really rewarding because they're like 35 people and they're sold out. So we're like, woohoo, sold out show. Nobody has to know the details of that, sold out. But they're really intimate, and you can see each other's faces, and you can read the audience, and you can feel the music, and that's been really beautiful. And like I said, we are working really hard we started a project called the Slow Music Movement many years ago. And that's just been all around sustainable touring. And this has just been even more of a reminder and an excuse to take that on and really try and travel and tour in smaller and more sustainable ways. And so sailboats, that's just like the number one on our list, tour by boat. Right? I know. I
have a question.
Yes, please.
Just on the heels of your poetry,
and I can't tell. Sorry.
Oh, it's Roxy. It's Roxy.
Hi, darling. Okay,
Hi.
I can't do.
I can spotlight myself. Hello. My question, there's something like in my spirit about spoken word, that's like so alive in the work that you do, and also kind of embedded in the roots of hip hop and like, you know, just activism in general and the spoken word revolution. And I guess my question is about empowering the voice and what like you would recommend to people who are in this space and they're looking to empower their voices more, to be a vehicle for these transmissions. And yeah, so I don't know if it's like a fully formed question, but it's like in that general
Totally. space. No, I love poetry. I think it's maybe my first love. I think I love it. I mean, I don't want to pick, it's like picking your favorite kid or something. I mean, I love the arts but poetry has got such a power to it. And I was we're sitting in on a David Whyte class, who is an amazing kind of scholar, mystic poet out of the British Isles. And he does a lot of the kind of Celtic traditions. And he said, you know, poetry, it's interesting because people think of poetry as like, oh, it's just kind of, it's soft and it's delicate. And he's like, no, poetry is the street fighter. Poetry can hang with the punches, and it can deliver the messages, and it can go into any dark and any hard place, and it can hold its own there, you know? And so I really think for starters, start digging in to poets that you love, find their work, read it out loud, find poems that are like provoking to you in a particular way. And spoken word is our contemporary model of poetry, and we have access to it, but there's poems 2,000 years old that mean so much for right now, you know. And I would put that on anybody's quarantine side project, you know, to just spend a little bit of time with some books of poetry, do a little bit of digging and research, and then stretch into that. Write from that. Find a line or a stanza that you love, and see if you can write from that in a contemporary way, or just read them out loud, memorize them, recite them, you know, when you're walking. And it's a wonderful idea to me to think that we could all have like a few of our favorite poems memorized in our back pockets for like our favorite party tricks, you know. That would just change the vibe completely.
This is perfect segue for your poem.
It's true. And I think I see it. Sophia has a question, and I would love to hear it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, such a beautiful, amazing work that you do all the time. Question is related to, I feel like the essence of your work, this beautiful melding and renewing of tradition and futures, right? That there's this beautiful blend that you carry as an essence and as message. And the question is related to music in general, in a way like present and future, a bit what has become a challenge, right? Even for artists right now, technology and, as I say, all the restrictions. So if you could maybe share a little bit more about that experience of music in the now, and also what you're seeing for a future, for a dreaming of an inkling, an intuition, some inspiration that's already coming to you. So basically music, present and future. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Totally. Will you clarify a little bit about the question about the music, the first part of the question? I want to make sure I get that right.
In relationship to the present moment right now, there are lots of challenges, right, for musicians. As you said, the concerts and the audience and the restrictions to be in person. So maybe if you could share a little bit of what those challenges, how have you navigated those challenges, or what have you found them to be? And even the newness you've mentioned already, the 35 intimate concert, right? And you can see people's faces, something is changing, right?
Yeah.
But both there's challenges and the need to innovate or imagine new possibilities as well.
Yeah.
Basically how you're sharing and what you see as the challenge for music for now.
Totally. Well, I think artists have this really interesting canary in the coal mine sort of a role in the world. And so we are often hypersensitive. And I don't like that. I make fun of that in myself. I make fun of it in everything. You know, like I don't want to be the overly sensitive, affected by everything. But also I do think it's a very real part of being a creative interpreter. I really think of it as interpretation. I don't think that there is an original voice. I think that there's like a sea of muses, and there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pieces of work and song and poetry and art, and all we're doing is sort of reinterpreting and perhaps bringing all of these works back in at different times. And so I don't think there's an original voice, but I do think that that those of us that have chosen or have been chosen to go down the creative path, you know, we are usually can be bludgeoned by the hardship, you know. And I asked a beautiful mentor of mine once, I said, you know, sometimes I think maybe I am manic, like I have these high highs and these low lows. And she was like, no, I don't think that that is manic, you know. I think that that is your job. Your work is to interpret and create these spaces where, you know, the creative voice is very alive and very approachable and a resource for all of us. And then when you step out of that space, when any of us step out of that space, you know, then the mundane and the hardship and the heaviness and the heartbreak can be catatonic sometimes, you know. And I think everyone I know now that we have many less distractions is trying to figure out how to deal with the catatonic side, with the wallowing place, because we don't have as much distraction, as much sparkle, as much information input that we can just ride on the highs all the time. And I think that that is hard, and I also think that that's wildly important. And I think that it gives us a place as artists to figure out how to be more long haul durable. So I think that's been a hard part of this year, you know, is really, okay, we've got to know how to deal with the lows, and the lows are heavy, and there's a lot of them, and there's not a place right now for our resources in the kind of vibrant side of the creativity. So that's a long and very personal answer to that question, you know, but I think it's important. And then musically, I think, you know, I think if we don't know how to bend, we break, period, you know. Like, we've got to, as people, as individuals, as humans, as a nation, as a festival culture, whatever realm, as a family, you know, the adaptability and flexibility is one of our biggest resources. And so I think that everybody's just kind of figuring out how to roll with the punches, and that is such a resource, you know. And that's the way we're going to do it. That's the way we're going to figure out and strategize and make all these new jumps forward. And I have this line in a song, and maybe I'll do the song actually now, because I think it's a good response to that. I wrote this song during quarantine. I mean, we're still sort of in it, but I wrote this, and it's called Golden, but I have to sneeze. Excuse me. But it's called Golden, and in like a moment of total existential crisis, of which there were many, I spent the entire quarantine in a tiny, tiny, tiny farm in central Costa Rica, which was really, really a blessing, but not short of immense existential crisis. Like, if it really gets bad, I will ride a mule to my home in Georgia. Like, I can get there, you know, like, I definitely wasn't in the, like, we are the chosen ones and I'm here because I'm supposed to be living in bliss mode. I was like, this is a huge global crisis and I'm gonna be on the front lines if it gets really weird for my family, okay? But I'm really glad to be on this farm. So I wrote this song in a moment of existential crisis. And the tagline of it is, we don't really know if this is apocalypse or victory. So that's just been my mantra, is like, I mean, we don't know. We don't know if this is like the fall apart or if this is the low and we're gonna rebuild from here, and it might be some combination of all of that, but it's a song called Golden. And this is my dad's old beater blues guitar. It doesn't stay in tune at all, and I love it. It's not gonna stay in tune. It's kind of sexy though. Sister, prankster, priestess, jokester, trickster. Every morning a song from my mother, shy but a Mozart, secret undercover. Every morning a meal from my lover, straight from the garden, sage, nettle, clover. Straight from the garden, sage, nettle, clover. Learned, seems we are beholden, and we walk towards our own death, and know we are golden. All the lessons learned, seems we are beholden, and we walk towards our own death, and know we are golden. Know we are golden. To the river, wild rush of water never fails to deliver. This life is falling while everything is calling. Take a deep breath, lean into the stall, and it's all that we ask for, but it really never looked like this. Don't sit back now, don't be dismissive. We're sitting in the mystery, real life living history, and no one's really sure if it's apocalypse or victory. Yeah. No one's really sure if it's apocalypse or victory. Yeah. All the lessons learned, seems we are beholden. We walk towards our own death and know we are golden. All the lessons learned, seems we are beholden. We walk towards our own death and know we are golden. Know we are golden. Know we are golden. Know we are golden. Time keeps running, it's wild and it's cunning. Keep your senses fine-tuned, stay still and stay stunning. Your roots are your mastery. Find a new pathway, dig up hollow bones. Learn how to collapse and stay your glory-bound promise. This moment is upon us, let our language be kind. Rule out the rawness, find solace and purpose. Get savvy, let's work it. This life is your birthright, your breath and your service. Well, this life is your birthright, your breath and your service. All the lessons learned, see we walk towards our own death and know we are golden. All the lessons learned seems we are beholden. And we walk towards our own death and know we are golden. 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 All the lessons learned, know we are golden. Ooh, yeah.
Oh, that was so beautiful. I feel so called to share with you right now, Leah, that in the container of the Zoom right now, we have so many members of the studio and so many members of the team who have been working together for somewhere between 15 and 8 months, 15 for the team at varying degrees. Amanda and I started this January. And then the cohort members that joined in July, and then the community that's come together to support. But I like that something about, I mean, your music often brings me to tears, but something about that specifically, I just wanted to like thank you, especially that we're in like day 7 of this 8-day celebration of this like peak of all of us just like pouring our heart and soul and belief in our creativity into like banding together to like usher this transition as a community through our art and through our voices and through our song and through like our creative expression. And like there has just been so much love poured in, and like you are just like I feel like I'm like, this is like the CBD salve of my soul right now.
Oh, can I quote that? I'll put that on my like back of the new album. This is like the CBD salve of singing.
Oh, so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you all for all your hard work, for gathering and figuring out how to make these things happen. And we're just building more and more relationship now, so that as we come slowly back into blooming season, which may not be quite yet, you know, that we have all of these roots, you know, all of this good bedrock of roots. So it's all still here.
Beautiful, beautiful. And that last song, you probably already know, but the chord progression is very similar to Curtis Mayfield's People Get Ready.
Oh, yeah.
One of my favorite songs.
Oh,
and the train is coming, and we have the vision train going. Amanda Sage is one of our artists, and she's been running the vision train for a whole year now, 24/7. Choo-choo. So yeah, so grateful. That was absolutely stunning. Really excited to hear the recording of that one.
Yay, totally. Yeah, well, thank you all for having us. Thank you for having me. And everyone is, my family is floating around in the windows. Chloe says hi.
Hi, family. Hi, Chloe. I have my mom is here and my sister is here. We have the whole family all together.
So lovely. And yeah, we have a new album coming, so keep your eyes out. I think it'll be out in May with the Rising Appalachia, and I'm working on a solo album, which is a few years in the works and probably a few years still to go, but I'm working on it. And and it's just really, it's powerful to see creativity and regeneration coming forward, and everybody hanging out and taking good care in their gardens and their living rooms and their families. And may we all come back mighty stronger. So thank you all for having me. And I see you,
If
Makua.
you could clarify, how could we support you and what you're doing? You know, websites, sharing the word, spreading around. How could we support that regenerative flow for yourself?
Thank you for asking that. The most amazing way that we are supported is just by the music being listened to. We have a Patreon, which was really, really long and hard thing for us to put together because we don't really like a lot of self-promotion. But we have a Patreon, which we are able to dump all kinds of cool, creative, half-finished, half-cooked ideas and projects into it. We have 7 albums. They're all on Spotify and YouTube and Bandcamp and everything else. So listen to the music and share the music and put the music in your soundtracks and your yoga classes. If you have amazing friends that run podcasts, send them our way. We want to be doing more interviews. You know, I think that the word spreading is just so powerful, and that's the best way to do it. So just let folks know that we're out here. Rising Appalachia, I'll put it in the chat because it's a little hard to spell, but if you Google search it, oh look, you did it already. You put our Patreon in there. Thanks for knowing how to do that. Honestly, if you just look up Rising Appalachia on any of your platforms, you will find a massive amount. I don't have a platform much for my solo work. I just have an Instagram, which is Leah Song Music. And when that comes, it would be amazing to have a bedrock of conversations and networking and all of that, but it'll take a little while still. So thank you guys so much for all your work, and thank you for everything you're doing, and have an amazing rest of your event, and continue sharing and weaving and creating this resilient bedrock. May we all come back bright and stronger.
Thank you, Leah. Thank you for generously saying so much longer than you intended to.
Totally. Well, we get into good stuff, and you know, everybody comes in and out. It's important. Gotta honor the muses. Have a beautiful rest of your session. Thank you for having me. I'll stay here, but I'll take my camera off for a bit and go rally the crew. So you all enjoy.
Feel free to unmute yourselves and share your gratitude with Leah.
Yeah. Thank you, thank you, thank you,
Yeah, Leah.
thank you.
Aloha.
Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you.
Be given an intimate space.
Yay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. What a journey we've been on, especially those of you who have been in here for when did we start? 11? 3 hours and 48 minutes ago. Amazing. How do you feel, Amanda Joy?
I don't often not have words. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So powerful. Yeah, just really feeling the moment and the opportunity that we have, and yeah, just kind of speechless, honestly, but feeling the Regenaissance. I actually just had a moment I've been waiting for a long time, which is really feeling like I really do believe it's possible more than ever. And I knew I would mark that moment by expanding the tattoo on my shoulder. So I have this like bird chick, kind of looks like a monkey. He really needs his other wing out over here. And I think I'm going to do it. I think it's time. I think we're ready to fly. So I think, yeah, that just happened while she was singing. Ready. And maybe one of the studio artists can design the wing. Who wants to design his tattoo? Anyway, yeah, just personally feeling, yeah, like we really are more capable than we know, and just seeing all of the artists come out of the woodwork and knowing that we're alongside such incredible masters like Leah. Yeah, I feel hope beyond what that word sounds like. Yeah. Yeah, again, sorry. not articulate at the moment, speechless.
You're doing great. This is beautiful. I also just want to like extend our spirit wings of gratitude out to Becca Dakini, who helped organize that, with Lydia Violet, who came and played yesterday. Obviously, Leah mentioned Lydia. And yeah, I feel it. I don't know if you heard Nico's story yesterday, Amanda, from our moment in Cabo, where I was like, I think we're going to make it. Speaking of making it, I need to go help Nico facilitate some live streams that are happening for the Living Systems Laboratory. And then we got to be back here. Oh, we're going to have our evening session in the Vision Train. Yeah, we're going to do it in the Vision Train because we're going to segue directly into David's story. So, there's a lot of really great stuff happening right now. And I will show you quickly before I close the stream. We have, what's going on? Oh, the collaboratory spotlights are what's going on. Colin is also live chainsaw carving. Amazing. And oh my goodness. What? Carl Van Vechten.
Oh, is that one of Mel's personas?
Is live right now.
Oh, good.
Right now.
Goodness, we should probably
That.
Also, for those watching,
watch
worlds upon worlds upon worlds that we have created. It's almost endless content. Highly recommend that you go to regenera.art. It's a good landing page to find all of those virtual worlds. There's Topias, there's New Art City, which is almost ready or ready?
It's pretty much there. Yeah. It's just like an incredibly ambitious, huge 3-dimensional 3D world
and
build.
It's a decade long, and this is just the first week. So we are just embarking on this decade-long virtual world of Regenera, which is here to remind us of the future that is possible, that is equitable and just and regenerative and decolonized and biomimetic and synergistic and synergistic together, synergistic. And yeah, there's so much to explore. I got lost in some of the topias last night, just exploring all the art, and it's so fun. Highly recommend it.
And everything is clickable. So like, you know, there's 150, 200 assets inside of Topia, and every single one links to a different thing, a different artist, a different like facilitated immersive journey that they've created. Same thing for Mora. And so take the time to go and play. If you want to just transport yourself right now, I will just put one of the links in here just so you can just go for it and go have fun. Because it's epic. But yeah, regener.art is your like central landing page for everything. And with that, we will invite you to share your voices, and then we'll close the stream.
Woohoo!
Yes. Lena, so good to have you here, sister.
So good to be here and witness this beautiful birthing. It's just amazing. Fills my heart with so much joy.
Yes, yes. I know this is your like 6th Zoom of the year. I know you are very picky about your ways of screen time, so it really means a lot that you're joining us. Thank you.
I couldn't resist. This one. So thank you so much.
Yes.
All right, see you all out there. See you back in the place in the train at 4.